Chapter 2749. The system was drinking a 28 law fight and eating a 39 steak. I'm eating my own private savings. Didn't I grab a bunch of expired food when the supermarket was on sale recently? I'm eating. There's also a time limit for free, so I have to eat faster. Otherwise, in the next plane, the side quest would come to ask for the refrigerator. How could such a righteous person not return it? After all, it wasn't him. So before coming to the next plane, he had to eat more to make up for it. What do you mean you don't need to make up for it? Does being shameless count as making up for it? This refrigerator made him pay the price of being shameless. After Wei Bai heard this, she actually felt a little pity. Let's not eat expired food. It's not good for the body. The system was touched. Its relationship with the host had finally come out. Thinking about the first few planes, the host couldn't wait for it to die. Wei Bai, if you eat something bad, the medical fees are much more expensive than the food. If you die from eating, it's over. If you don't die from eating and become paralyzed from eating, wouldn't you blame me for a lifetime, right? The system took a bite of the steak and almost choked to death on the spot. Wei Bai laughed. Am I not joking? You eat. Eat more. Don't be shy. System, what's wrong with completely losing your appetite? After Wei Bai said these words, she felt that she was really too concerned about the system. Was there a host who cared about the system as much as she did? No. She and the system were indeed the best and most affectionate pair in history. Wei Bai even felt a little proud. After washing the dishes, Qin Xiu and Bai Changyan walked out with a smile. The two old men put their arms around each other's shoulders and were unusually affectionate. Then they very tacitly sat on the sofa opposite Wei Bai and began to play games. Kinship was precious, but a daughter was expensive. In terms of which one was better, let's talk about it after the game. Wei Bai was speechless at this pair of old and childish ghosts. Then she silently picked up her phone and silently searched for the little game to change equipment. It seemed very fun. Download it and try to change equipment. She could even ask other little brothers to buy equipment for her. That little angel dress, old and cute. Qin Xiu was not good, but he had good taste. Then the group of old people playing games became a family of 3 playing games. The 3 of them laughed and joked as they played the game with a bored expression on their faces. The system silently and continued to eat. Paralyzed from eating, he wanted to cling to the host for life, who told them to be a beautiful family. Yi Yuxuan always felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He silently turned around and saw those strange people. After a silence for a while, he calmly called. After all, to support. He couldn't fall behind in his work either. After all, it wasn't easy to support his family. It was just. Yi Yuxuan, who had also reached the end of his work, calmly put down his phone and turned off his work computer. Then he calmly got up and walked behind Qin Xiu and Bai Changyan. Then he grabbed one of them by the collar and pulled them out. Qin Xiu, Bai Changyan. Yi Yuxuan calmly dragged people out, loosened his collar, and calmly said, "It's late, go back to sleep early, otherwise it's not good for health." Bai Changyan and Qin Xiu. Yi Yuxuan, is there anything you didn't take away? Bai Changyan and Qin Xiu pondered. Yi Yuxuan, if you can't remember, go back and think about it. I will help you deal with the things you left behind. / collect below to record this reading record. Chapter 2750. Qin Xiu couldn't help but ask, how do we deal with it? Send it to the door? Yi Yuxuan's voice was flat. Throw in the trash can. Bai Changyan and Qin Xiu were silent again. Yi Yuxuan asked indifferently, is there anything else? Not waiting for the two to speak, Yi Yuxuan suddenly realized, it seems that there's nothing else. After that, the door closed. After the 2 people outside the door were silent for a long time, Qin Xiu said, Xian seems to be a little angry. Is it because we have been here for too long and occupied his dating time? Bai Changyan frowned. This young man's temper is too big. I have to consider whether it is a good idea for Wei to marry him. Qin Xiu immediately put on a smiling face. Young people are hot-blooded and have a bad temper. Let's educate them again. Bai Changyan sighed. I don't blame him because he is pitiful. Qin Xiu was surprised. Did Bai Changyin already know Yi Yuxuan's illness? Yi Yuxuan didn't have any emotional problems, except for the Yi family elders, some core relatives of the Yi family. Basically, no one knew the specific illness. But he heard by Changyin's face. He was forced by Wei Wei, so he has to take responsibility. Qin Xiu, after closing the door, Yi Yuxuan saw her lying on the sofa. Her chin was resting on her arm, and her hair fell to her cheeks. Her white skin and black hair formed a clean color impact. It was obviously not seduction, but it was charming. More and more beautiful. Yi Yuxuan knew that this was not an illusion, but every time she woke up, she couldn't get rid of the change. Whether it was her temperament, character, or appearance, she was more or less affected. Just like him, even if he restrained himself, the influence gradually turned him into a person, a normal man who loved her. Yi Yuxuan lowered her eyes, suppressed the surging love in her heart, and walked to the sofa without showing any expression. Then she picked up the blanket and covered her waist. Lie on your stomach. Don't forget to cover yourself with something so you don't catch a cold. Wei Wei Bai's eyebrows with a bit of laziness. She unhurriedly stretched out her fingertips and hooked his tightly buttoned shirt collar. Her fingertips exerted force and pulled. The shirt buttons were torn apart, revealing half of the collarbone. What? You want to persuade me to take good care of myself? Yi Yuxuan lowered his eyes, and the light above his head cast a hazy halo on his face. His voice was hoarse. Getting better is good for me. The old driver, don't think that she didn't know what he meant. Was she infected by Qin Xiu's chirps? Bai Weiwei's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corners of her eyes were dyed red. Slowly, she loosened her grip on his loosened collar and moved up. His TSS she-tess? Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and hooked her legs around his waist. Yi Yuxuan stopped breathing, and his hands couldn't help but clasp her waist for fear that she would fall. Wei Wei Bai's hair was spread out, and the loose cuffs fell to her elbows, revealing her white forearms. Her forehead was against his, as if on purpose. Her voice was delicate and tender. Do you think my body is good like this? She directly coiled herself around him. Her posture was more flirtatious than a vixen's. Yi Yuxuan felt that the surging love in his chest was about to be aroused by her. If the soul could be moved, it would be attracted by her. His voice was low. You don't mess with me. Although this sentence was calm, it was almost a plea for mercy. /download collections the Chapter 2751. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were like silk, and the seduction in her eyes was faintly discernible. Her bare ankles lightly rubbed against his trousers. How am I messing with you, Mr. Yi? The light in Yi Yuxuan's eyes gradually changed from calm to a burning focus. Although his expression was calm, one could see the slight sweat on his forehead. You can mess around as much as you want, he said in a low voice, and the end of his voice had a husky magnetism. Wei Wei Bai wrapped her arms around his neck, and as if on purpose, she smiled and leaned closer to him. How am I messing around? I just want to whisper something to you. She was like a vixen. Every inch of her body was so bewitching. Her voice was low, soft, and sweet. When she leaned close to him, the tip of her nose brushed against his fair chin. Yi Yuxuan felt his face start to heat up. This was instinctive. It was not shyness. It was a kind of passion caused by an overly repressed and fanatical desire for her. She did this to him. It was really too cruel. She was so seductive, but the examination in her eyes was so blatant. It was as if she was searching for a secret on his body that she had not found out. And she was too confident in his self-control. What do you want to say to me, whisper? His voice was so low that it was unimaginable. It was almost suppressed in his throat, bringing out a hint of sexiness. Wei Wei Bai's smile started to become seductive, as if a vixen had directly taken over him. She stared at the hot sweat on the man's forehead, which slowly slid down his handsome cheeks. Wei Wei Bai's smile deepened, and her breath gently brushed against his skin. Is it hot? Yi Yuxuan's expression was calm, and he forced himself to say, It's okay. Wei Wei Bai, oh, she dragged out her tone, and her lips were already close to his face, slowly moving down. This was an intimate action that was similar to rubbing against him. To the man, it was the last thread of reason that broke. He felt that he didn't want to hear any more whispers. If this is the trial of torture, he was probably going to surrender completely. Whatever she asked, he would tell her. Wei Wei Bai was still rubbing against him unhurriedly. In the next second, she was smashed onto the soft sofa. The man on top of her had already knelt on one knee on the sofa. His hands clasped her shoulders, and he looked at her with a strong and crazy gaze. What do you want to tell me? I'm listening. Yi Yuxuan's gaze was like intertwined silk. In her half-closed eyes, there was a sharp and gorgeous love. He lowered his head, and his slender body overshadowed Wei Wei Bai. If you want to hear any secret words, I can also tell you, he said with a scorching tone. If you want to hear anything, I can also tell you. Wei Wei Bai held her breath. She only felt that the man on top of her was standing against the light, his handsome face full of forbearance. Yi Yuxuan is cold, indifferent, calm, and ascetic. However, she tore apart the label of this man bit by bit, revealing the fiery passion within. And this Yi Yuxuan is more like a human, and more attractive. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but purse her lips, not wanting to let herself show a covetous expression. All of a sudden, all the doubts and probing disappeared. The corners of her eyes began to turn red, and the tips of her ears also turned red like peach blossoms. Her eyes didn't move as she stared at him. It was as if she had passed through countless fragmented worlds. She finally returned here, saw him, and he didn't let her regret it every time, abandoning everything in those worlds and coming back again. Chapter 2752. Wei Wei Bai suddenly reached out and cupped his face. Her fingertips gently rubbed against his cheeks. His cheeks were flushed, and his temperature burned her fingertips. Yi Yuxuan. Her voice was soft and gentle. In the future, I will like you very much. She couldn't say that she loved him now. She couldn't say that she loved him. She couldn't say that she was loyal to him. She couldn't say that she belonged to him alone, because her mission had not been completed yet. She could only say that it would be in the future. That was the future that she had worked so hard for so long. And in the future, she would like him very, very much. Her future was for him. Yi Yuxuan's pupils contracted slightly. He looked at her serious expression without blinking. In an instant, he understood the meaning of this sentence. His body was still warm, but his heart was filled with gentleness. The corners of his eyes curved up, and the corners of his mouth rose. A smile spread in his eyes. Wei Wei Bai saw that he was smiling so happily and felt a little embarrassed. He was so happy that he had turned into a fool by making an empty promise. It made people wonder if water had entered his brain. It was sometimes good and sometimes bad, but she felt that he was very cute like this. Wei Wei Bai also smiled. The doubt in her eyes disappeared. She pulled him down. The atmosphere was intimate. The atmosphere was natural. Everything seemed to be just right. The overlapping shadows under the lights seemed exceptionally beautiful. Just as something was about to happen, the doorbell rang. Yi Yuxuan and Wei Wei Bai. The doorbell rang for a long time. Wei Wei Bai immediately let go of him and lay back on the sofa. She calmed her breathing. Her face was red, and her eyes were misty. Yi Yuxuan was in a much worse state. He pulled the blanket over and wrapped Wei Wei Bai, hiding half of her face under the blanket. Although her clothes were not messed up yet, but he couldn't bear to see her like this. Then he stretched out his long legs and stepped off the sofa. He reached out and smoothed his messy hair back, revealing his fair forehead. His expression darkened, and his eyes regained their calmness. There was even a trace of unfriendly coldness in them. As he buttoned his collar, he walked towards the door. By the time he opened the door, his collar was already buttoned to the top, completely covering himself. Outside the door was his company's staff. A man and a woman smiled respectfully. "Director Yi, the things you wanted are here. We specially selected the best materials. We guarantee that the small ornaments made will be super beautiful. Miss Bai will definitely like it." Yi Yuxuan's expression was gloomy. Her originally exquisite face now looked like a carefully carved piece of art. There was not a single trace of life. He clearly didn't show the slightest hint of displeasure. However, the smiles on the two staff members' faces froze. He felt a murderous aura. What was going on? Yi Yuxuan stared at them silently for a while before reaching out to take the box. Scram. His voice was unusually calm and indifferent. There was no fluctuation. There was no fluctuation of emotions that made people scram at all. Then, the door was closed. The staff standing outside stood in a daze for a long time before touching the goosebumps on his arms. Director Yi, it's so scary. The female staff member trembled as she spoke. The male staff member asked, "Did we disturb something?" The two staff members recalled Yi Yuxuan's state. When they said that, it had seemed like she was disturbed by something, which was why she was so angry. The two staff members revealed Annie smiles. We won't prepare a crib next time, right? He. Chapter 2753. After all, Yi Yuxuan was famous for looking like a robot. It was rare for him to have more human emotions. The employees of the company were also happy. Who would be happy that the boss had no human feelings at all? Wasn't he looking for trouble? And the boss who was in love was easy to talk to. Just thinking about it made him feel that his previous boss was like a cold-hearted demon king. Yi Yuxuan, who was holding the box with a dark expression, saw that Wei Wei Bai had already lifted the blanket and was lying on the sofa, happily playing games with his phone again. The speed at which he changed his expression. The charming and gentle atmosphere just now was completely destroyed. Wei Wei Bai turned back and smiled happily. Xian, do you want to play a cross-dressing game together? I'll buy you an angel outfit if you chirp a few times. Yi Yuxuan, then he put down the box silently, turned around and walked back. Wei Wei Bai asked casually, "Where are you going?" Yi Yuxuan replied calmly, "Bathroom." Wei Wei Bai nodded and said, "Remember to ask for cold water." Yi Yuxuan's footsteps paused, and then he finally suppressed his heavy breathing helplessly, entered the bathroom, and closed the door heavily. Wei Wei Bai, who was lying on the sofa, couldn't help but laugh silently while holding his phone. How cute. He probably had to take a cold shower this time. Wei Wei Bai laughed and said, "Tongzi, do you think Xian looks like Yu Xiaoyan?" The system almost choked on a mouthful of fish gelatin chicken soup. It was immediately dumbfounded. Huh? What? What did you say? I was just locked in a small dark room. Wei Wei Bai narrowed his eyes. Oh, you can't hear clearly, right? The system immediately said, "I heard clearly. Do you think Yu Xiaoyan looks like Yi Yuxuan? I think they're super alike. Look, they're both men. They have 2 eyes and 1 mouth. They're about the same height, and their hair is black. They look alike in every way." Wei Wei Bai, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with that description, but he kept feeling that something was wrong. The system replied, "How can they not be similar? Their personalities are more alike. They're cold on the outside and don't know how to talk. Who are they trying to impress with that cold face of theirs?" Wei Wei Bai, that makes sense. Both of them were extremely calm. However, there seemed to be quite a lot of men with such personalities. Comparing them like this, it seemed that the difference between the two of them was quite big. After all, Yu Xiaoyan was so sorrowful and self-pitying. He was still a very artistic young man. Yi Yuxuan had a calm personality, but she was also related to Yu Xiaoyan. As for the rest, they were completely different. After all, she had never seen Yi Yuxuan being so cultured, especially when it came to jade. He reckoned that in Yi Yuxuan's eyes, those Hatian jades, and mutton fat jades were all broken stones. Bai Weiwei's heart was at ease, and she continued to giggle and play games. The system heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, although the host was smart, he wasn't someone who would go to a dead end and come up with a solution. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be able to hide Yi Yuxuan's secret. Once the secret was leaked, based on Big Boss Ye's nature, no one would be able to live well if he exploded. He didn't want to be treated as the person who leaked the secret and be beaten to death. As expected, Yi Yuxuan slowly came out of the bathroom after a while. His wet hair had been wiped clean, and the black hair fell softly in front of his forehead, giving him a sense of casual handsomeness. Then, without a word, he opened the box. It was a pile of rainbow-colored tassels, a pile of high-quality jade bread rings, luxurious jade brands, jasper beads, and emerald lotuses appeared. T-crossover system. Prince Charming, come here. Chapter 2754. Wei Wei Bai originally thought that Yi Yuxuan would not care about those broken stones. However, when she looked up, she saw that this man was actually holding a tassel and a broken stone and studying it with his head lowered. Yi Yuxuan frowned for a while before slowly looking at Wei Wei Bai. Do you think this thing is really beautiful? Wei Wei Bai stared at him for a while before saying unhurriedly, then what do you think? Yi Yuxuan was expressionless. A pile of broken stones. He really felt that way. He even felt that it was really strange that he liked these things in that world. Therefore, what he was most affected by was his implicit and crazy love for her, hidden in a kiss of hair. As for the rest, for example, he planted flowers and vegetables every day and felt sad for the lotus flowers. He even carried a pile of broken stones and tassels to do manual work. He did not understand it all. He did not want to understand either. Wei Wei Bai's mouth twitched. Don't you think they are very beautiful? After all, they're very expensive. Yi Yuxuan stared at the pile of stones seriously for a long time before seriously commenting, IQ tax. Wei Wei Bai. Yi Yuxuan suddenly thought of something and looked at her again. It's quite beautiful. Don't you like it? I'll tie these colored lines to the stones for you. Such beautiful jade handicrafts. He described them as colored lines and stones. He immediately felt that it was really an IQ tax. Wei Wei Bai touched her chin and sighed. All right, you could just make a collar for me. Yi Yuxuan nodded and then casually took out his phone and sent another message. What needs a collar is a cheongsam or a traditional Chinese dress. Which one do you like? Wei Wei Bai said casually, a cheongsam. Yi Yuxuan nodded calmly. Everything was very natural. This natural made Wei Wei Bai put down the doubts in her heart. After returning from the plane, he might still be immersed in the emotions of the plane. After all, she had been in the plane for a while this time, so she didn't have an emotional shield. Perhaps it was also the infection during this period of time. She might have thought wrongly when she came back. Although she thought so, Wei Wei Bai still observed Yi Yuxuan's movement from the corner of her eyes. He's checking his phone. Wei Wei Bai tried to take a look. A complete manual of collar pressing teaching you how to quickly weave a jade pendant and so on and so forth. That's right. Yi Yuxuan didn't know how to do that. His fingers were exceptionally beautiful. His knuckles were well defined, and the broken stones on his fingertips looked even more moist and beautiful. Yi Yuxuan sat for a long time. Only then did she slowly weave a tassel that looked like a China knot. Although it was his first time doing it, it was not bad. But it was a little ugly. Wei Wei Bai squinted at the man next to her as she played the game. After watching for a long time, she started to feel sleepy. When Yi Yuxuan finished another craft, he saw Wei Wei Bai leaning against the sofa and falling asleep. Her soft face was light pink from sleep. Her hands were hanging under the sofa, and her phone had fallen onto the carpet. She was like a child. Yi Yuxuan let go of the stones, then walked over, bent down, picked her up, and walked into the room. She shouldn't have suspected anything. Yi Yuxuan thought calmly. It was too easy to guess her mood and observe her expression, and she trusted him too much. He didn't show any signs, so she really thought that there was nothing wrong with him. Yi Yuxuan stuffed her into the quilt, letting the quilt tightly wrap around her. Then he lowered his head and kissed her deeply, just like how she thought that he would cool down after taking a cold shower. In fact, his skin was still hot. Under the dim yellow light, she finally felt uncomfortable and hit him with her hand. He let go of her. Then, afraid that he would be impulsive, he touched her face to comfort her and turned to leave the room. Yi Yuxuan felt that he would die of depression sooner or later. He sat back on the table, and his fingers instinctively made an unusually complicated and beautiful craft to suppress himself. This kind of complicated and instantaneous little thing. It was Yu Xiaoyan's ability. Yi Yuxuan stared at this thing for a long time and calmly opened it. It was like he was opening up everything in that world. This was good. If she wanted to continue, he couldn't give her any burdens. Yi Yuxuan sat at the table for a long time before he finally breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that you're willing to come back. He was really afraid that one day she would stay in another world. Then Yi Yuxuan bent down to pick up the phone she dropped and accidentally swiped the screen. He saw that Wei Wei Bai was actually playing a transvestite account. He even said generously to a female player, "Chirp me, I'll buy you a flower suit." Female player. Little brother is the best. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Yi Yuxuan's expression darkened. Wei Wei Bai slept comfortably. Suddenly, her lips were pressed down by something, and she had difficulty breathing. She struggled to wake up, but saw the man with his back to the light with a gloomy face. I heard that if I chirp you, you'll buy a suit for others. Little brother? Wei Wei Bai. He was just playing a game to relax. Was he jealous? When Yi Yuxuan saw her unrepentant appearance, he suddenly kissed her on the lips 3 times in silence. Wei Wei Bai. Yi Yuxuan. If I kiss you, will you buy me equipment? Wei Wei Bai stared at him innocently. Suddenly, she couldn't help but laugh. She hugged him with both hands and pulled him onto the bed. I'll buy it for you. I'll buy it for you. I'll buy whatever you want. She lay in his arms and kissed him gently. So, don't be angry, my little brother. // save button at the bottom to record this reading. Crossover system, Adonis, come over here, comma. Chapter 2755. Yi Yuxuan only felt a warm and soft breath, which made him sluggish for a moment. Then the person in his arms said sleepily, Okay, go to sleep. After she kissed him, she promised to buy him equipment. Then she hugged him with both hands and legs, not afraid that he would be beastly. She rubbed her head against his chest and muttered, Men are so delicate. Yi Yuxuan was speechless for a moment. Then he pursed his lips, pulled the blanket over, and covered her. Then he instinctively lowered his head to kiss the top of her head. Suddenly, he paused and slowly kissed the side of her ear. Softly, he whispered, You only know how to mess with me. Messing with him like this, with a smug look on her face. What's the difference between her and the little devil? Bai Wei Wei, who was in his arms, had already fallen asleep. She had a hateful appearance that ignored everything. Yi Yuxuan also closed his eyes. He felt the sweet and soft temperature in his arms and felt his heart full. Under the gentle light, the man's ears were still red. When she kissed him just now, the fever seemed to take a long time to subside. Wei Wei Bai stayed in reality for a few weeks. She downloaded a cross-dressing game for Yi Yuxuan. She bought him equipment. She chased after him every day, calling him darling. I'll give you the whole world. Yi Yuxuan's face was calm. Wei Wei Bai was a transvestite, and he was a normal male number. So the strange thing was, in the game, the 2 men were together every day. Qin Xiao, the transvestite, would tail them from time to time, and Bai Changyin secretly went online to peep. It was simply a perverted family, but it was the one with the most purchasing power. Every time Wei Wei Bai bought some good-looking skin and threw it to Yi Yuxuan would double it, or even 10 times, to buy it for her. A childish game. It was a large-scale scene of dog abuse. The game dealer was probably the happiest one. His HP of 14,500 had been full for a long time. No matter how long he stayed, he would only have the same amount of HP. Wei Wei Bai sometimes thought about not transmigrating at all. So many years were enough for her to squander. And if she really lived that long, she wouldn't be pretty when she was old. But occasionally, when she woke up from her sleep, she would see the man hugging her as he slept. He was so beautiful that he could be compared to her. He would probably be a handsome old man when he got older. Then she must be an old beauty. When he thought about it this way, he actually felt that there was nothing wrong with fighting a few more rounds to earn more HP. So Wei Wei Bai said to the system, Let's go smash everything. The system ate until it was full. It struggled to empty the remaining items in the refrigerator and hid them in its own refrigerator. Finally, he managed to eat it. The rest of the food filled his fridge until there was nothing left. The Sidewatch's refrigerator was much bigger than his. He didn't eat more. His fridge couldn't hold so much food. He heard Wei Wei Bai say that she was leaving. The system bent down and rubbed its round belly. Coming. If he ate too much, he had to walk more to digest it. Wei Wei Bai's soul had just left her body. Yi Yuxuan opened his eyes. He lowered his eyes and stared at her for a long time before continuing to hug her. Then he slowly closed his eyes. He fell into a deep sleep. Wei Wei Bai woke up this time with a foot basin in her hands. She focused her eyes and saw that she was standing in an ancient-looking corridor. The lanterns above her head emitted a faint light. The pavilions outside the corridor were unusually winding and beautiful, and she was wearing an ancient female outfit. She wore a light yellow narrow-sleeved shirt and a garnet red long skirt that covered her shoes. Address of the full text: https://www.sashu.com. Download of the full text: https://www.sashu.com//. Chapter 2756. She moved her feet. Oh, it was the feeling of embroidered shoes. It seemed that this time it was set in ancient times. Wei Wei Bai looked calm and saw that the corridor was full of servant girls. This should be the backyard. At first, she thought that she was also a servant girl. However, she saw that the servant girls who passed by bowed to her. Although they turned around, they couldn't help but look at her with mocking eyes. It wasn't obvious. For Wei Wei Bai, it was too easy to observe this. And most of the servant girls' clothes were light green or light blue. The material of their clothes was not as good as hers. Just as Wei Wei Bai was holding a foot basin with a cute face. The system was finally back. He was too full and ran too far with his soul. He was too tired and paralyzed for a long time before he crawled back. Memory input. Wei Wei Bai could calmly deal with the aftereffects of the memory input. Yes, input it. When the memory was transmitted, the automatic notification sounded. This mission is to obtain Lu Xinglan's love. Target: Lu Xinglan. Completion: 0. Time to be determined. He must be addicted to waiting for the mission time. Wei Wei Bai almost rolled her eyes at the completion time. After accepting the memory, she continued to walk forward slowly. The memory made her face a little pale, but her expression changed from calm to nervous, shy, and expectant. Her identity in this world was a concubine, happened to be the concubine of the target, Lu Xinglan. When Wei Wei Bai saw this identity, she really wanted to twitch the corners of her mouth. She had been someone's wife so many times. She was a little not used to suddenly having a concubine. And her identity before she became a concubine was also a servant girl. This also explained why those servant girls were so disdainful when they bowed to her just now. After all, they were the same background. And her identity as a concubine was especially bad, because it was the madam of the Lu family who forced it on her son. And the reason she was chosen was that she was good-looking and looked good. Wei Wei Bai give birth to a baby. What was worse was when the original owner was sent to Lu Xinglan's room with her face cut open. Lu Xinglan was currently fighting against enemies at the border. He had no idea that he had a concubine, and Mother Lu was in such a hurry to get someone to send it over. It was just that Lu Xinglan was already 23 years old, but she still didn't get close to women, nor did she get married. In ancient times, he was considered an extremely old bachelor. Anyone would be anxious if they were in his shoes. However, he had a problem that prevented him from starting a family. Yes, Lu Xinglan hated women. It was the kind of disgust that made him want to vomit whenever a woman approached him. And it was uncontrollable. It was like the physiological reaction of someone who hated coriander and wanted to throw up when they smelled it. Lu Xinglan happened to hate women. All women, no matter if they were young, old, or even his mother. Just looking at it made him want to vomit. This was an illness that couldn't be cured. This worried Lu Xinglan's mother. She was the only child in the family. Several generations of the Lu family had made great contributions in battle, but in the end, they all died on the battlefield. And this tragedy was exchanged for monstrous power and the terrifying control of the military. In the end, it all fell into Lu Xinglan's hands. And he didn't disappoint. He led the entire army and defeated the cavalry of the Northern Kingdom. He also broke the guts of those people. He raised the reputation of the Lu family to another level. His career was incomparably successful. Only his family was left. He was the only male left in the Lu family. If he didn't get married, he would have to wait for the family line to end. Mother Lu couldn't bear it. At https://www.sashu.com/full text at https://www.sashu Com download at https://www.sashu. Com at https://m. Sashu. Com. She held a foot basin and was going to fulfill her duty. Washing feet. She could have babies as she washed. At https://www.sashu.com/full text at https://www.sashu.com download text at https://www.sashu.com at https://m sashu.com//. Chapter 2758. Wei Wei Bai finally walked to Lu Xinglan's courtyard. The courtyard was empty, and there was a place like a martial arts arena set up outside. There were knives, spears, sticks, and all kinds of targets. Several of them had been smashed and were on the verge of collapsing. Wei Wei Bai, she felt that those targets were ahead. What was going on? The door of the house was wide open, and the moonlight poured in. The curtain of broken beads was lifted and tied to one side. An incense burner could be seen in the room, and the smoke of agarwood was floating. Although Lu Xinglan was the highest-ranking military commander, with the title of Great General and many military achievements, he was not a simple, brainless general. He liked to read and was good at strategy. The staff officers and military counselors around him were just decorations. And after the battlefield, he liked to live a refined life. The style of the house was elegant like a scholar. Wei Wei Bai held a basin of water, and her hands were already sore. There was really no one in the courtyard. There seemed to be a page boy or something, but she didn't see anyone. The system said, the male lead is sitting inside and reading. He sits in a relatively remote place. Others can't see him at the door, but he can see anything at the door. Wei Wei Bai, such a person is very vigilant. Looking for a place to read was like squatting on an advantageous spot to hunt and secretly peeping around to be at ease. She stood at the door and didn't say anything. Instead, she was silent, and there was even hesitation and uneasiness on her face. There was a trace of expectation and fear in her eyes. The pomegranate red dress was also moving slightly. It was unusually urgent and uneasy. On one side of the bead curtain in the room, there were many books thrown casually on the rosewood table. On the table, wide black sleeves were casually hanging on the table. A delicate hand like jade was casually flipping through the books. He heard someone coming, but he was too lazy to look up. The heat of the night was hot, and there was an ice basin in the room. Wei Wei Bai wandered outside for a while and asked the system for the side reward. The side reward from the previous plane was so tiring. Even if the reward was useless, she wouldn't let it go. After all, she could cheat the main system a little. The system had already searched every corner of the supermarket discount area. Finally, he found a decent reward for him. Ding! Side reward released. Wei Wei Bai waited for a while. What reward? Why is there no instruction manual? The system said, warning, it's stuck. It's a type of fragrant essential oil. It's been sprinkled on your body. Wei Wei Bai was a loss. What's the use of it? The system said, isn't the male lead disgusted by women? It's probably because your feminine scent is too smelly. As a reward, I'll sprinkle some fragrant essential oil on you. I guarantee that your feminine scent will be different from the rest. He won't be able to stop himself from smelling it and definitely won't vomit. Wei Wei Bai, what if it's not the taste that disgusts him? Then the reward is useless. Hee. Wei Wei Bai, could this reward be any more unreliable? Trash. Wei Wei Bai felt that if she continued to stand at the door and chat with the system about the side quest, it would be too late. He was probably going to have a heart attack from anger. She resumed her persona and gently stepped forward. She was well-behaved, but she did not make a sound. Just as his foot touched the threshold, she heard a voice that was as cold as ice and as crisp as broken jade coming from inside the door. Go back. Wei Wei Bai's footsteps paused. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her voice contained a trace of soft surprise. Young master. Her voice was unexpectedly pleasing to the ears. It made the man who was reading a book look up indifferently. He saw a petite figure standing at the door outside the beaded curtains. She was as graceful as a willow in the spring breeze. She bent her body as if she wanted to see something. Her pair of charming eyes were wet. Her fair face had a delicate blush because of walking. She was like a flower bud that was pinched and tender. She was extremely charming, but had a pure and simple beauty to it. The man who was sitting at the table was slightly stunned. He saw that the audacious girl had already stepped into his room. The moment of stagnation in the man's eyes disappeared and was replaced by a trace of impatience. She really was not afraid of death. It seemed that he would have to kick another one out. Chapter 2759. Wei Wei Bai walked in with water, one step at a time, hesitant but determined. Then she saw the sleeve on the table, the fair hand that was exposed, and the book that was casually thrown on the table. The yellow light of the candlelight. The outline of the man's body under the light cast a shadow on the wall. He was unusually slender and beautiful. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but blink. Then she lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Young master, I'll wash your feet." The man by the table sneered coldly. "Get out." It was the second time he said it. The impatience in his voice was unusually obvious. Wei Wei Bai stood in place, not daring to look up. A small figure, with a head of dark green hair, with a beautiful peony and jasper hairpin, hung down like a tender flower stalk that was slumped by the rain. Her garnet dress moved slightly. It seemed like she wanted to move forward, but was afraid of something. The man inside slowly looked up, a pair of cold black eyes, with a hint of mockery. She was really unscrupulous to climb up. Knowing his problem, she still wanted to climb up. It was definitely not because of him. It was because of the financial power behind him. He threw the book away, put his hands on the armrest of the chair, and said in a cold voice, "Come here." When he said this, his foot also pointed outside, as if waiting for something. Wei Wei Bai looked up. A trace of surprise appeared on her face. A soft face, a pair of seductive eyes, shimmering with enchanting light. The rippling light in the man's eyes moved. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at -30. Wei Wei Bai. What kind of deep hatred to have such a high negative favorability? Normally, this kind of favorability would only appear after killing one's parents or entire family. Right? System. No, he just hates women. Wei Wei Bai. She now knew that there were people who hated women to this extent. At first, she thought it was a disguise. After all, Lu Xinglan didn't have this problem when she was young. It only started when she was older. Maybe it was because the Lu family was too powerful and they were afraid of the royal family. So they damaged their reputation. That way, he could protect himself. As for those who hated women, the best way to protect themselves was to end their bloodline. Without descendants, he was no different from a eunuch. No matter how much he struggled after the death of his child, wouldn't those things be taken back by the royal family? In the end, when she saw the favorability rating, Wei Wei Bai was finally certain. This guy was in the final stages of misogyny. Wei Wei Bai put away all the distracting thoughts and put on an innocent look of admiration and joy to be close to him. She walked forward in small steps without raising her head. Her long eyelashes covered her beautiful eyes as she walked to the table with a basin of warm water for washing her feet. The man's cold gaze fell on her. He saw her drooping her neck. Her small red lips were full and captivating. It was like a small cherry, delicate and alluring, waiting to be picked. Her waist was slender and soft, and her pomegranate red skirt was swaying. Every step she took was like a lotus. The light yellow top with narrow sleeves was clearly not very tight. However, he could see the seductive curve of her chest. Even though it was done casually, her every move seemed to be seductive. Lu Xinglan turned his gaze away with an indifferent expression. His clean brows were already slightly furrowed. The unfamiliar fragrance of the girl had already filled the air. He stretched out his finger and put it under his nose with a look of disdain. The smell of a woman. It made him want to vomit, as if this didn't make him feel like vomiting. So what? He would definitely feel it later. They were not close enough. Chapter 2760. The basin was placed beside the chair. The girl also lowered her head and squatted down, saying softly, "I'll take off young master's shoes." She did not raise her head from beginning to end and looked at him directly. After all, she was born as a servant girl, so she was very reserved. The habit of not daring to look directly at her master was very obvious on her. Her delicate wrists stretched out from her sleeves. Her hands were clean and did not wear any accessories such as bracelets. Her skin was so white that it was like a layer of powder had been shaved off. Under the light, it was dazzling white. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes. His calm and cold eyes carried a trace of gloomy anger. He sneered, "Aren't you afraid that I'll kick you out?" It was instinctive for him to kick women. It was like when someone saw an animal or insect that they hated. In an instant, he instinctively kicked out. Others would think that he did it on purpose. In fact, it was purely unintentional. After all, he was not that free. There were so many strong enemies and people that he hated. He did not even have enough time to kick them. How could it be a woman's turn? A group of weak birds. He was not interested in being a target. That was why Wei Bai was so close to him. His feet did not instinctively kick out. He was a little surprised. He stared coldly at the top of her head. From afar, she did not look ugly. Now that she was close, he looked at the top of her head. Her hair was thick. Wei Bai reached out and touched his lower part with her fingertips. She saw that he was stepping on the ground with unusual force. It was not that easy to take off his shoes. She could only whisper again, "Young master, can you lift your foot?" Lu Xinglan lifted his foot, but it looked like he was going to kick her. Wei Bai did not seem to see it. Her hand was just about to touch his shoes, but she heard him say, "Last chance, get out." Wei Bai's fingers stiffened, and her body also stiffened. Her eyelashes trembled, and the grievance in her eyes suddenly surged out. With a splash, tears rolled down her cheeks. Her originally seductive eyes were unbelievably clear and pure after being soaked in water. Wei Bai's half-squatting legs softened as she knelt down. She trembled silently, and the sound of her sobbing was not obvious at all. The raised foot was about to move forward. However, when she cried, the man's feet stiffened. Wei Bai suddenly whispered, "Don't chase me away, young master." Without waiting for Lu Xinglan to mock him, she was already crying as she said, "Old madam will kill me." His painful sobs were filled with despair. "I was bought to serve you. If you don't want me, the old madam can't keep me." She had already been promoted to a concubine. Furthermore, she was a servant girl. This was already a blow to Mother Lu's reputation, and she was desperate. If this foxy servant girl could make her son more open-minded about women, then she would be able to make her son more open-minded. Although this concubine had damaged her reputation, she was still a concubine. At the very least, it had some value. If she was also kicked out by her own son, then the enraged Mother Lu would definitely be even more disgusted to see her. He killed her directly, or sold to a terrible place like the brothel to be tortured. This was also a reasonable guess. As she cried, she suddenly felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. She didn't know when a slender, beautiful, yet strong finger had reached her collar. The fingertips hooked around her collar and pulled it open bit by bit, revealing the secret and seductive skin underneath. She trembled and almost wanted to avoid it. However, she heard the man say slowly, "Didn't you want to serve me? If you dare to run, I'll break your legs and sell you." Chapter 2761. Wei Bai, under the light. The girl lowered her head uneasily. Because of his actions, she was so scared that the skin on her neck was trembling. Under her wet eyelashes, her eyes were unusually wet and clear. That foxy and enchanting temperament was diluted by a lot. Her dazed and silly temperament was even more prominent. The man sitting narrowed his eyes and casually pulled open her collar with his fingertips. The collar fell open, revealing her small and exquisite collarbone and half of her white and tender shoulder. She seemed to be very cold. It was clearly hot in the room, even though there was an ice basin. The man did not feel any coldness at all. He lowered his head calmly. His movements were slow, and there was even a trace of hesitation. Although it was not obvious, One could see that his brows were furrowed even deeper. It was as if he was going to do something particularly scary. The girl knelt with her head lowered in a daze. Suddenly, she felt an unfamiliar warm breath by her neck. Before she could react, the man who pulled open her collar lowered his head to smell her skin and immediately let go of her clothes. He quickly threw them away as if he was holding something dirty. Then, he casually reached out and leaned against the tip of his nose, as if he was suppressing something, as if he was afraid of kissing something that made him want to vomit. Wei Wei Bai felt that she might really be smelly. Otherwise, Lu Xinglan would not be like this. Smelling her was no different from smelling gas. But she did not vomit. If she really vomited, she would be traumatized and disgusted. The next second, Lu Xinglan, who was enduring something, suddenly said in a low voice, "Get out." The girl trembled and the corners of her eyes turned red. She really looked wronged. The man stared at her coldly for a while before explaining, "You've stayed long enough. You didn't get kicked out when you stepped into my room. You walked out on your own, understand?" She lowered her head and did not look up, but one could see the confusion. The man sneered, "Get lost." The tears in Wei Wei Bai's eyes almost fell again because of the roar. The man choked on the order in his mouth and could not say it for a moment. In the military camp, he was used to giving orders and scolding people loudly. For a moment, he also used this habit on her. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore and started crying. He hated weak and crying women the most. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at -10. Wei Wei Bai, did her favorable impression of him jump off a building? Had he directly risen by 20? She knew when to stop. She immediately stood up and said to him in a low voice, "Young master, okay, I'll go out now." After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. The peonies on her temples swayed along with her hair, making her look exceptionally beautiful. Before walking out, Wei Wei Bai pretended to be careless and unintentionally glanced at him. The man sat on a chair with a standing lamp beside him. In the hazy halo of light, Lu Xinglan's face, which had nothing to do with the general, was exceptionally fair and beautiful. There was no trace of her being tempered by the wind and sun. He looked like a girl, but he didn't have the slightest sense of softness. Dressed in a long robe, his temperament was calm and indifferent. Every inch of his skin was snow white and clean. It contained an invisible sense of power. The flowing light in his eyes was like a bloody light, and a baleful aura appeared unconsciously. Wei Wei Bai stepped out of the door and didn't look back again. It was enough to get a feel of the target's personality first. After all, this was the first time they had met. Wei Wei Bai calmly thought about it. But how did that 20 favorability suddenly increase? He pulled open her collar and took a whiff. Immediately, his body temperature rose. Chapter 2762. Could it be that he had been single for too long? So, when he smelled a woman, he suddenly became excited? When he saw that seductive figure disappear, Lu Xinglan released his fingers with a puzzled expression. He didn't feel like vomiting at all. He even felt that she smelled good. For Lu Xinglan, this experience was too strange, so he was a bit slow for a moment. Why? Didn't he feel disgusted? Could it be that she was too beautiful? No. Lu Xinglan calmly refuted himself. He had seen more beautiful women, but he still felt like a piece of smelly meat, so disgusting that he didn't want to eat for 3 days. This was the first time. He didn't want to vomit. A woman who didn't feel like a piece of smelly meat. Lu Xinglan looked at the cold foot washing water. He thought of that girl who didn't smell, crying and begging him not to chase her away. They were afraid that they would be sold or killed. He took off his shoes expressionlessly and began to wash his feet. The water was cold, but he still felt a bit hot. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Under her collar, he could vaguely see the strap of her belly band, which was carefully hidden under her collar. It was also pink. It was bright pink. It was like a ball of fire, making him feel hot. Lu Xinglan looked straight ahead, but his thin lips couldn't help but purse. Ding! The male lead's favorability is -5. Wei Wei Bai, who had just left the courtyard, analyzed with the system. Why did the favorability jump so fast? The system was also confused. Wei Wei Bai calmly touched her neck and the collar that she had already put on. Could it be that Lu Xinglan was obsessed with necks? Seeing that her neck was beautiful, he desperately increased the favorability. He was really a generous pervert. But soon, Wei Wei Bai thought of the reward. Maybe Lu Xinglan simply hates the smell of women, and I just made him not feel disgusted. So he was so happy that he desperately increased the favorability. This wasn't an unfounded guess. After all, for a normal man, any woman would be so disgusted that he couldn't eat. Suddenly, he met someone who could make him eat. It would be strange if the favorability didn't increase. Wei Wei Bai analyzed the situation with the system as she returned to her small courtyard. The small courtyard was given to her by Mother Lu. After all, she was considered one of the people in her son's house. It wasn't good to let her really squeeze in with the servant girls and sleep on the shared bed. There were 2 servant girls in the courtyard for her as well. However, he was exceptionally disdainful, looking down on her. Who didn't know that Bai Wei Wei would definitely be sold? Because no woman could get close to Lu Xinglan. As Lu Xinglan's concubine, what use was she if she couldn't get close to him? Therefore, no one wanted to be her master. Everyone was waiting for her bad luck. Seeing Wei Wei Bai come in, the 2 servant girls continued to eat the sunflower seeds and ignored her. He teased, "Some magpies think that they have fallen into the phoenix's nest because they are lame. They really think that they are the real phoenix." That's true. In a few days, this courtyard will probably be empty again. After all, Lu Xinglan didn't touch women, and the meaning of Wei Wei Bai's existence was for him to touch. Therefore, after a few days, Mrs. Lu saw that Wei Wei Bai couldn't make it. How could this courtyard not be empty? Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything and returned to her room. Passers-by, A, B, C, D, and so on. At first, she was still interested in arguing for a few minutes to pass the time. Now, she didn't even find such a boring way to pass the time. It was better to rest and sleep. In the end, at night, Lu Xinglan's page boy came to the courtyard door with a lantern. "Madam Bai, young master wants you to go over and sit." / Chapter 2763. When Wei Wei Bai heard Ms. Bai, she was making rouge with petals. She searched for the things used for makeup in this era. She actually saw something like lead powder. It was poisonous. The lipstick was even cheaper, and it seemed to contain heavy metals. It would be disfigured for a long time. Then she searched for all kinds of things of the original owner. Sure enough, she was poor. There were only some copper coins left in the money box, and only a little bit of silver. Not to mention buying things, she could only order the kitchen to make some food. She could only order it a few times. She was a maid before, and her monthly salary was pitiful, and her food was particularly bad. Although the yard was set aside for 2 maids, and she was forcibly promoted. But everything else could not keep up. Mother Lu did not give her any benefits. Perhaps he didn't have the slightest confidence in whether Bai Wei Wei could let his son touch women. So there was almost no investment in Wei Wei Bai. There was not even a jewelry box. Wei Wei Bai felt that she continued to be poor in this plane. No matter how poor she was, she could not be poor in beauty. Without good skincare products, she could do it herself. Outside the door, the voice of the boy's servant sounded again. "Ms. Bai, the young master asked you to go over." This name was too annoying. A boy servant directly called her Ms. Bai, which was extremely disrespectful. Wei Wei Bai looked at herself in the bronze mirror and picked up a flower for rouge on the table unhurriedly. She pinned it to her hair. The begonia flower was much brighter than rouge. The flower was beautiful, and it saved money. Wei Wei Bai got up calmly and then walked out slowly. It had been too long since she had experienced this kind of era. She had almost forgotten her etiquette for fear that she would be too abrupt when she walked. She had to walk in small steps. It was really hard to walk. Wei Wei Bai reached out and pushed the door open. She saw the 2 maids at the door staring at her like goldfish. She smiled kindly at them. Then she said softly to the boy's servant in a green cloth shirt, "I'm coming, little boy's servant." The little boy's servant, the page boy, had a cold expression on his face, as if he had just returned from a battlefield. His back was straight. Although his appearance was ordinary, his aura was not weak. Looking through the information in the system, he was indeed a loyal subordinate who had followed Lu Xinglan from the battlefield. He was only a page boy to protect Lu Xinglan. It was natural for him to look down on a concubine. Wei Wei Bai pretended not to notice the strange expression on his face. She walked out, her figure swaying, her garnet red dress rippling in the absence of wind. Under the light of the lanterns in the dark of night, the girl was graceful and beautiful. The little boy followed her without saying a word. Arriving at Lu Xinglan's courtyard, the page boy pushed open the door. "Let's go in." Wei Wei Bai smiled politely. "Thank you, little attendant." The little attendant was speechless. Being a page boy was sullen enough, but he was still young. For someone who had just returned from the battlefield and was full of murderous intent, this was not the case. That was a really disgusting name. Wei Wei Bai walked into the courtyard. The door was open. The curtain of broken beads was still tied up. Lu Xinglan seemed to like opening doors very much. She put away the beaded curtain. This way, she could see the situation at the door. This may be an instinct and habit of the generals. The system said, "There are two people, the male protagonist and his mother." Wei Wei Bai stopped in her tracks. It seemed that there was a chance. The mother and son were waiting for her in the same room. Wei Wei Bai lowered her eyes and head, maintaining the etiquette of servant girl, and stood at the door. Her voice was soft. "Young master." There was a silence at the door, and a man's clear voice came. "Come in." There was a hint of a surprised smile on her face. Then she stepped into the room. /mobile. Chapter 2764. She saw an old woman dressed in luxurious clothes sitting on the chair in front of her. Her wrinkles had reached her forehead. Her hair was gray, and she wore all kinds of expensive jewelry and hairpins. Anyway, it was a feudal society. She looked like a typical landlady. The Lu family produced generals in every generation, but they were not literati. Mother Lu was also a Han Chinese at the border when she was young. Her taste was average. In this era, there was no culture in the family. It was a pure accident that she could raise a Lu Xinglan who liked to read and use her brain. Maybe it was a genetic mutation. The old woman stared at Wei Wei Bai. Her eyes were not friendly, but there was some expectation. Wei Wei Bai saw her, took a few steps forward, and bowed. "Madam." She was soft and weak. When she bowed, her body was enchanting, but she did not realize it. Mother Lu's eyes flashed with disgust, but she did not say anything. After all, she still hoped that this kind of woman could help her son's illness. "Xiao Wei is here." Mother Lu put on a fake smile and forced herself to be kind. Wei Wei Bai lowered her head shyly. Her slender neck was unusually beautiful, as white as a piece of warm jade. She was beautiful, soft, and charming in her innocence. Lu Xinglan, who was sitting beside the table and drawing a map, looked up casually. She stared at the little bit of skin that the girl showed for a while, and then looked away. The atmosphere in the room was very tense. After Wei Wei Bai bowed, she stood aside. She did not ask why she was here. She was here because she was asked to. A strategy that was on hold was just that casual. There was no rush anyway. Moreover, she hated women like Lu Xinglan who were sick. The more she rushed forward, the more likely she would be kicked away. If she was kicked away, then so be it. It was not easy to increase the favorability points, but it dropped again. It was a loss. Because she was bored, Wei Wei Bai talked to the system about her mentality. The system said, "This is the strategy of fatigue." The more she wore, the longer the strategy. The host was not made of iron. Even with the emotional shield, it blocked a lot of negative energy for the host. But after a long time, this kind of fatigue, many hosts had them. Wei Wei Bai would occasionally appear in such a state, but it was rare for a plane to be so lazy at the beginning. Wei Wei Bai, that's not it either. I'm still enthusiastic about the increase in favorability, but this character setting is too difficult to display. In the ancient dimension, a maid in the backyard. She was just a concubine. Have you ever read otaku novels? The more active a concubine is, the faster she dies. That's why we can't let go of ourselves when we're not familiar with each other in the beginning. They chatted for a while. Finally, she heard Mother Lu say, "If you're not satisfied with this, then I'll enter the palace." When Lu Xinglan heard this, the tip of her pen paused. Then, she unhurriedly raised her eyes. Her dark eyes were calm, but carried a trace of coldness. Mother Lu picked up her teacup as if to confront him. You know, this family can't have no descendants. Her Royal Highness happens to like you, so I'll go to the palace to ask for a favor so that you could be engaged to Her Royal Highness. This is still possible. Lu Xinglan's brows furrowed slightly, but she quickly calmed down. The Lu clan is too powerful. We can't involve other forces. This external force included the royal family. This kind of power was already a threat to the royal family. A marriage alliance with the royal family? Wouldn't that make the royal family even more fearful? Mother Lu snorted coldly. Involve? Well, I'm afraid that I won't have the face to meet my ancestors when I see the King of Hell in 100 years. You'll be a disgrace to the Lu clan if you don't have an heir. /save button you'll be able to see it the next time you open the bookshelf, if you like. Chapter 2765. Wei Wei lowered her head. She complained in her heart. Ah, this futile stench. Then she couldn't help but grab her sleeves with both hands. A trace of worry appeared on her face, as if she wanted to look up but didn't dare. Lu Xinglan put down the pen. Under the warm light, the man stood up from the chair. His slender body was like bamboo or pine. He had a cold and tough feeling. Although his appearance was gentle and delicate, the speed of his walking was unusually neat and clean. He walked in front of Mother Lu, and Wei Wei stood beside him. As if casually, his deep eyes calmly swept over her. Then he looked at Mother Lu again. Mother, give me some time. You know my illness. Mother Lu was angry and put down the teacup heavily. How much more time do you need? When did you treat it? If her son desperately tried to get close to a woman to treat his illness, it would be painful. Mother Lu was more relieved. At least her child still had a heart. He cared about being unfilial and having no descendants. But Lu Xinglan didn't have the slightest sense of anxiety. Instead, he publicized his reputation of being misogynistic to everyone. He was the god of war, with great power and unparalleled handsomeness. He even became famous at the poetry competition. With dozens of poems, he defeated the top scorer in the liberal arts. His literary reputation spread far and wide. Everything was good. Once his misogyny came out, many good people were scared away. But he wasn't anxious at all. He wasn't anxious, but his mother was. Mother Lu reached out and slammed the table, about to stand up. I'll go to the palace and ask for a decree to let you marry the princess. You can kick away other women, but you can't deliberately kick away the princess. After interacting for a long time, you'll have a good impression of her. And there were many secrets in the royal family. To keep the descendants, there were all kinds of secret royal medicines. There could be one that could treat Lu Xinglan. The danger of marrying a princess was worth it. A cold sharpness flashed in Lu Xinglan's eyes. But filial piety ruled the world. His misogynistic reputation could spread. He couldn't hate his mother. He had too many things to deal with. He didn't have time to tangle with these miscellaneous things. And he couldn't blatantly stop his mother, if it was the border within his sphere of influence. Mother Lu couldn't threaten him like that. When he was angry, he could even put her under house arrest for old age. And no one dared to say anything. The forces in the capital were intricate and complicated. While there were many benefits to be had, there were also many concerns. For example, you can't put me under house arrest. Let someone take advantage of the situation. Marrying a princess was even more out of the question. She had a good impression of him in the royal family and was trying to kill the women around him. Only the emperor's little princess, who was doted on, had a heart as vicious as a scorpion. When he saw her, he couldn't help but feel nauseous from across the street. If he really begged for grace and married such a plaything into his family, he would definitely not be able to control himself and poison her to death. Lu Xinglan lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, her peripheral vision fell on the girl beside her. Even though they were so close, he didn't feel the slightest bit repulsed by her scent. He walked too close to his mother. It was uncomfortable to be so close to her. Bai Weiwei seemed to notice the light in his eyes. She secretly looked up, but just happened to meet his cold and sharp eyes. She was slightly stunned, and her face immediately turned red, as if she had a guilty conscience, She immediately lowered her head. The begonia flowers beside her hair made her soft and fair face look even more alluring. The man was also slightly stunned. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 0. Lu Xinglan retracted his gaze. The slight touch in his heart made him feel a little strange. //T. Chapter 2766. He thought for a moment, then suddenly looked up and said seriously, "Mother, I've tried my best to treat it, but this illness is too embarrassing. I can't let your son treat it with such fanfare." Mother Lu was happy to hear that. "How do you treat it? How are the effects?" Lu Xinglan's expression was indifferent and calm, as if he was thinking about something. Effects? Just as he finished speaking, suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the arm of the dazed by Wei Wei, pulling her into his arms. The girl's soft body was in his arms. This made the man, who was ready to die and had originally thought that he would vomit, stiffen for a moment. He didn't feel any disgust. He frowned in confusion, as if he didn't dare to believe it. Mother Lu saw him holding Wei Wei Bai in his arms without any discomfort. She stood up in surprise. Lu Xinglan pushed the boat with the current. "I said I'm treating it. This is the effect." Mother Lu was overjoyed. "Then you treat all women," Lu Xinglan said unhurriedly. "No, I'm not disgusted with her. It's because I practiced with her and tried my best to get used to her smell that I barely suppressed the disgust." After saying that, he pushed her aside with a look of disdain on his face. "But it won't last long. I guess I'll have to practice for a long time before I can really touch her." Mother Lu said anxiously, "Don't worry. It's fine as long as it can be treated. Our ancestors bless us. There's hope for our family." After saying that, she immediately said, "Let her move into the courtyard tomorrow and live with you. You'll treat her day and night. You'll be able to cure your illness and marry your first wife." Lu Xinglan's eyes didn't show the slightest change. He bowed politely. "Mother, you can make the decision." Mother Lu said with a smile, "You have to treat it well." After saying that, Mother Lu looked at Wei Wei Bai, and there was a trace of hypocritical kindness in her smile. "Serve the young master well." Wei Wei Bai said softly, "Yes, madam." This stinking feudal family. After Mother Lu left, Wei Wei Bai was still standing in the same place. She pursed her lips and frowned. She seemed a little strange. Lu Xinglan walked in from the door. He saw the slender and soft girl look up timidly like a pitiful little rabbit. She was so enchanting. His eyes were full of childishness that did not understand the world. He walked over expressionlessly, but when he passed by her, he said, "Stay here tonight. If you want to act, you have to go all out." Letting her stay could shut Mother Lu's mouth. However, Wei Wei Bai took a few steps back. Her voice was trembling with excitement and uneasiness. "Yes, young master." Lu Xinglan had wanted to leave, but she saw her retreating further and further away. He indifferently looked up and stared at her for a while before slowly saying, "Do you hate me that much?" When Wei Wei Bai heard this, she immediately looked up and shook her head desperately. The girl's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to say something, but couldn't. Lu Xinglan pursed her thin lips, turned around, and slowly walked towards her. Wei Wei Bai widened her eyes and stepped back. For every step he took, she took 2 steps back. When she finally touched the table, the unfinished map on it trembled. Unable to retreat, she immediately reached out and made a gesture to stop him. "Young master, I know you hate women. It must be hard to get close to me." Lu Xinglan paused. "Why? Didn't you want to get close to me?" When it was dark just now, she couldn't wait to get close to him with a basin of water. Now it was late at night. Why was she so shy? Wei Wei Bai's face paled. She habitually lowered her head, but this time she gave off a sense of dejection. Lu Xinglan did not continue forward. His puzzled gaze fell lightly on her lowered eyelashes. Her long and thin eyelashes were like broken butterfly wings. Every time they trembled, it was ticklish. The girl's cherry-like lips were a little pale. She finally sighed and said, "Young master, you don't have to deliberately get close to me to deal with old madam. As long as you hold my hand, I can bear with it even though it's disgusting. Lu Xinglan's eyes darkened. His cold, jade-like voice sounded faintly. Are you worried that I will be disgusted? Wei Wei Bai's face paled a little. She turned her head away and said in a soft and worried voice, I hope that young master will be well. Lu Xinglan stared at her silently for a while. Suddenly, he reached out and hugged her slender waist. The soft touch. It made the man unexpectedly pause for a moment. Then, he calmly put her on the table. She was shocked, and her eyes widened. The man's slender figure instantly enveloped her. He put his hands on both sides of her and bent down slightly. His face was facing her. The man's cold aura was infected with the smell of agarwood. There was a strong and calm feeling. His breathing was light, and his eyes had a few more traces of warmth. Do you think that I'm disgusting? Wei Wei Bai instinctively wanted to retreat, but he approached her step by step. In the end, the girl fell on the table in a panic. She pressed down on the messy papers on the table. However, the man had already closed in on her. She gave him an inch, and he wanted a yard. This was his enemy's evaluation of him. He clasped his fingers on her shoulder, preventing her from escaping. Then, his deep voice sounded with a hint of frivolity in the dark night. If you think I'm disgusting, come and treat me. Slash. Chapter 2767. The moonlight was brilliant. The light was warm and yellow. The atmosphere was too ambiguous. Wei Wei Bai's face was flushed red and full of panic. She wanted to push him away with both hands, but she was afraid of touching him. The man's strong touch and neat strength, like a wild beast catching a rabbit, made people unable to resist. He seemed to be used to it, even if it was such an insignificant contact. He also wanted to occupy the position of the absolute winner. Lu Xinglan's back was facing the candlelight. His beautiful and overly gentle face was covered with a layer of dreamy light. His voice, however, was slow and unhurried, as calm as ever. Didn't you come to have a baby with me? How are you going to have a baby when you're so shy? This sentence made Wei Wei Bai's face immediately turn red. Her fingers curled up and shrank into her sleeves. Her body lying on the table, the hem of her skirt hanging under the table, was pressed down by the man. Delicate spots of light were printed in her eyes, with a trace of shyness, but more than that, it was a dim acceptance of fate. It was the old madam's order. A servant's life was not worth 3 melons and 2 dates. No one would say anything if they were to be beaten to death and thrown into a mass grave if they were unwilling to obey the master's orders. So when the order was given, they had to do it. No one would think that a little servant had the right to refuse. His words made Lu Xinglan stop in her tracks. He supported his hands on both sides of her head. The girl's ink-black hair fell on the back of his hand, slightly cold and smooth. Lu Xinglan was silent for a while, then suddenly asked in a low voice, "You're not willing?" Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled. That blush went to the back of her ears. The begonia in her hair was completely outshone by her beauty. In her eyes, ripples of light flickered, carrying a trace of affection that could not be hidden no matter how hard she tried. "Young master is very good," she murmured. After saying this, her red lips immediately pursed tightly. She was so nervous that her skin began to tremble. In this era, a woman confessed to a man so openly. It was a kind of wanton. Wei Wei Bai clearly knew how bold she was, but she was also afraid that she would be bold like that. Her face flushed red and panicked. She turned her eyes away. Her eyelashes were lowered and her eyes were trembling. Everyone says that young master is very good. The more she tried to cover it up, the more obvious it was. Lu Xinglan raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a faint smile, "Who is everyone?" He seemed to have lost some of his strength. His fingers loosened, and his body couldn't hold on any longer. He saw the young lady's seductive eyes widen in an instant. Her seductive charm disappeared, and she looked more adorable. Lu Xinglan's smile deepened. It was as if he was playing with a rabbit. "Tell me the names one by one, and I'll give them a reward." Wei Wei Bai nervously clenched her fists in front of her chest. She stuttered, "It's just a lot of people. Many people have said it, but I can't remember it clearly." The gloomy scheming in Lu Xinglan's eyes as well as the straightforward unhappiness, were all replaced by the joy of teasing the rabbit. Then tell me what's good about me. Wei Wei Bai's breathing was a little hurried. It was the soft fragrance of a young girl. It was the complete opposite of the wind and sand of the desert and the cold snow of the border. Those were his two favorite scents. Today, he found that the young lady's soft fragrance was sweet and extravagant. It was like a cup of wine that wasn't spicy, but it was unusually intoxicating. His eyes darkened. It was his first time coming into contact with a woman, so he didn't feel disgusted. At first, he was puzzled and vigilant. Then he slowly calmed down. She was just a little maid. He had investigated her thoroughly, and she couldn't be scheming against him. She probably wasn't a spy. It just so happened that he didn't feel so repulsed by her scent. Chapter 2768. Then he started to be curious. Why? Of course, it was just a faint doubt. It didn't make him want to get close to her. If it wasn't for Mother Lu suddenly coming to ask for a decree to bring that vicious and smelly princess over, he probably wouldn't have thought of this little maid. He just wanted to use her to calm Mother Lu's heart. In a few months, his plan was completed. The capital had changed, and his power could cover the sky with one hand. He didn't have to look at people's faces like this. Lu Xinglan saw that she was still cowering, and it really scared her. His interest in teasing her decreased a little, and he was about to leave her. In the end, he heard the girl under him say in a soft voice, "It said that young master is outstanding in martial arts and literary talent. He is the dream man of every girl's life." The slow tone contained the girl's sweetness and sincerity. The meaning of liking was expressed in a simple sentence that every girl admired him. Lu Xinglan's calm eyes had a hint of strangeness. He stared at her silently for a long time, until he saw that her face was flushed red and her eyes were restless. She was so shy that she looked like she was going to faint in the next second. Lu Xinglan suddenly let go of her. He calmly turned sideways, pulled out a chair, and sat down. Then he reached out to support his chin and looked at the girl lying on the table. That gaze was focused and calm. It was as if he was looking at a picture on the table. On the contrary, Wei Wei Bai immediately sat up, but found that when she sat up, she looked down and saw Lu Xinglan's face close by. He was so tall, so he sat so much lower than her, but the two of them were still not far apart. So Lu Xinglan only looked up slightly, and he saw the girl's fair and flawless face. Wei Wei Bai awkwardly reached out to smooth her messy hair, and then struggled to lift her feet and get off the table. The hem of her skirt accidentally dragged over his body. The feeling of the pomegranate red skirt rubbing against his thigh was unusually unfamiliar and soft. His eyes darkened, but he didn't say anything. Wei Wei Bai, who didn't notice, had already run more than 10 steps forward. Then, she turned around and lowered her head. She hid by the screen, under the lantern, her voice low and trembling. "Young master, then I'll be heading back." Lu Xinglan smiled. "You can stay and talk to me through the night." Wei Wei Bai was so scared that she took a step back. She then said seriously, "The illness needs to be treated properly. You can't be so impatient." Lu Xinglan's smile froze. Why did these words sound so wrong? Of course, it could also be out of concern. After all, he had a bad reputation for hating women. Lu Xinglan stopped teasing her. He casually waved his hand, then leaned over and picked up the terrain map. His voice turned cold. "Go and rest." Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and nodded softly. Then she reached out and carefully and discreetly adjusted her clothes. The girl's shadow was projected onto the wall. Lu Xinglan held the picture and saw the hazy and slender figure of the young girl on the wall. She was touching her belt with her head down, and one hand was still under the collar in front of her chest. He seemed to be adjusting the buttons. A graceful figure. It was a silent seduction. His eyes, which had already calmed down, were now incomparably gloomy. Then he saw the girl bowing politely, and the shadow also gracefully bowed. "Young master, I'll be leaving then." Lu Xinglan's voice was indifferent. "Okay," but his eyes were still fixed on the wall. The girl didn't seem to realize that the shadow had exposed her ambiguous actions. She heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly turned to leave. Chapter 2769. When she crossed the threshold, she heard Lu Xinglan casually say, "I'll have little Xin pick you up tomorrow. Remember to pack up and come over." Little Xin was that page boy, actually called Xin Wu. Mother Lu let Wei Wei by into his courtyard. He was a little reluctant. But now, Lu Xinglan slightly glanced to the side and saw that the girl almost stepped on the hem of her dress and fell forward. She hurriedly stood up shakily like a stumbling little quail. Unusually happy. "Yes, young master." She answered softly and did not look back. She just hurriedly lowered her head and ran away. So hurried, was there some monster chasing her? Lu Xinglan looked back and found that the corner of his mouth was raised again. He touched his lips strangely. He was happy a little too many times today. Just as he was about to continue drawing, he looked up and saw on the table. The red and alluring begonia flower dropped its petals and fell into the book. Red and pitiful. Suddenly, his mind flashed to just now, the girl lying on the table, that timid and seductive look. Lu Xinglan stared blankly for a while, then lowered his head as if nothing had happened. But the hand that picked up the pen seemed to tremble. The ink fell onto the white paper. It was as if something had left a mark on his empty heart, and there were slight ripples in it. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 5. Wei Wei Bai turned around expressionlessly. It was easy to be a little white flower. She didn't have to do anything. His negative favorability rating, which was as if he had killed his father, suddenly rose to 5. She said to the system, "In the future, you have to be a little white flower for 10,000 years and not change. You have to focus on one point and study hard." System, it sounds like there's no problem, but doesn't the host want to be lazy? Wei Wei Bai sighed. "Look at me. I study hard. Don't I do well?" The system silently ate the small cake and agreed in a good mood. Yes, you're always right. You're the best." Wei Wei Bai was silent for a while, then said, "Don't mix with that side job. You're not the same as before." The system couldn't help but ask, "What's different?" Wasn't it all because of her? He had been so sincere from the beginning to the end. What was different? Wei Wei Bai said, "You're flattering me now. That's not good." Oh, Wei Wei Bai sighed. "Of course, if you were subdued by my charming beauty and noble character, then just take it that I have wronged you." "Scram," Wei Wei Bai said, "get lost." The system said, "Get lost, get lost." Wei Wei Bai, "I'll return it to you." "Get lost." The system said, "I'll return it back to you." "You better get lost." Today was yet another childish, poisonous, and delightful day. When Wei Wei Bai returned home, it was already very late at night. However, he saw 2 sneaky figures standing at the door. She walked over with a calm expression. However, she saw that it was her 2 maidservants. When they saw Wei Wei Bai, they immediately approached her in a flattering manner. "Little madam, we made supper. We know that you must not have eaten anything at this late hour." In this backyard, there were piles of women. They were all brought by Mother Lu. Just the maidservants alone were more than 100. From time to time, they would invite all kinds of unmarried distant relatives over. It was said that there was a distant cousin living in the East Wing. She was here to seek shelter. She looked weak and fragile, but she was also talented. She was similar to Lin Daiyu. However, without exception, none of the women could get within 3 meters of Lu Xinglan. Download the at https://m Sashu. Com button at the bottom to record your reading record. Chapter 2770. Anyone who was so close to him was thrown out. And Wei Wei Bai was the first to step into Lu Xinglan's courtyard. A woman who could still stay there. The news that she was moving into the courtyard tomorrow had already spread. Moreover, Mother Lu happily rewarded many servants. She said that her son's illness could be cured, and the antidote turned out to be Wei Wei Bai. Those who had rolled their eyes at her earlier were filled with regret. They couldn't wait to curry favor with her immediately. If Wei Wei Bai could really get into Lu Xinglan's bed, she would be so lucky to have a child. That was Jin Huangwang's thigh. After the 2 female servants heard the news, they became anxious and immediately ran over to curry favor. Wei Wei Bai revealed a friendly smile. "Sisters, you don't have to do this. It's too troublesome." After saying that, she naturally reached out and took the food boxes in their hands. She instructed the kitchen to make extra food. That would cost money. Wei Wei Bai happened to be hungry. It would be a waste not to eat when someone delivered food. The two female servants looked at the food boxes with heartache. To show their sincerity, this supper was made with good ingredients by the chef after spending a lot of money. They were still thinking that if Wei Wei Bai didn't accept it, they could also enjoy it tonight. After all, they usually spent so much money on such a meal. The servant girls were also reluctant to part with it. Wei Wei Bai carried the food boxes and walked straight into the room. It's getting late. Sisters, take care. I won't send you off. The two female servants originally wanted to let Wei Wei Bai take them to the courtyard to serve tomorrow. In the end, they couldn't speak. The door was already closed. The bolt was even unbolted. The sound was crisp and loud, like the sound of a slap in the face. Wei Wei Bai opened the food boxes and knew that there was no poison. After all, these two women knew exactly what they wanted. There was no reason to poison her. So she ate a good meal. When she drank the soup, she asked the system to make some poison with red dots. There was also a reaction of body poison. The system asked curiously, "Are you trying to frame them?" Wei Wei Bai ate and drank to her heart's content. I've been reading otaku novels and waiting for someone to frame me every day. In the end, when I finally got a food box, there were no scorpions, venomous snakes, centipedes, or poisons like oleander musk. What the hell were oleander and musk? This was clearly a drug used in palace intrigue novels. Wei Wei Bai. That's why I'm here to add to the fun of otaku fights. No matter what, there has to be at least one of these tricks. It turned out that the host was already so bad that no one could match him. Was that why he created his own opponent? Because she didn't frame her. She wanted to set him up and frame him. This black-hearted person was indeed his host. The next day, the errand boy went to call for him expressionlessly. Lu Xinglan had finished drawing the map and was making a sand table. He did the same. The man was wearing a white robe. His long hair was casually draped over his shoulders and was not tied up. There was more of a sense of carefreeness at home. His eyes were deep and calm. He was thinking about the soldiers at the border and the layout of the capital. He casually flipped open the geography book to check if the map was correct. Half a begonia petal was sandwiched between. He didn't pick it up cleanly last night. Lu Xinglan's eyes paused. Then, he looked up at the door as if nothing had happened. Xianwu had been gone for a long time. Just as Lu Xinglan was thinking this, he saw Xianwu appear at the door. But he didn't see that petite figure. He didn't say anything. Instead, he picked up the book and flipped through it slowly. His indifferent appearance was unusually calm. He didn't even ask why he was missing. Xianwu's face was still expressionless. She's sick. Lu Xinglan's fingers paused in the middle of flipping through the book. He looked up calmly. What illness? The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 2771. Xianwu said, "Looks like she's been poisoned." Lu Xinglan glanced at Xianwu. Poisoned? Xianwu said, "It's a private matter. It's not presentable. She probably ate the dirty stuff that the servant girl brought." Lu Xinglan's gaze returned to the book, and he sneered. He did not say anything. Xianwu also stood still. As a page boy, he was also a page boy with facial paralysis. Lu Xinglan stared at the book for a while, then finally threw it away and stood up. Xianwu followed him. Wei Wei Bai had a fever, and some ugly red marks began to appear on her face. The system wanted to buy toad poison. It said that if she ate it, her face would definitely protrude like a toad. She saw the picture. Ugh, I'll strangle whoever let me eat this. The system said, it doesn't have any side effects. It looks scary, but it doesn't hurt the body at all. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. No, you should hurt my body. Don't hurt my face. Thank you. The system said, there's a kind of flower poison that looks better, but it will cause side effects. For example, the body will reject it, fever or cold, dizziness, and so on. You should eat toad poison. Wei Wei Bai said, I'd rather drink arsenic. Thank you. The system, motherfucker, you're still so picky when you set me up. Motherfucker, You're trying to pick the medicine for me. So after Wei Wei Bai ate these things, she began to have a fever and cold. She began to lie on the bed and wrapped herself in the quilt, dying. But it was more like she was poisoned. She fell asleep in a daze and noticed a faint figure by the bed. The bed curtain was put down, and her hand was outside the curtain. It seemed to be a doctor bending down to check her pulse. She closed her eyes and did not move. Soon, there were some scattered instructions from outside. It seemed to be after prescribing the medicine, telling her how to boil it and not to be exposed to the wind. Wei Wei Bai withdrew her hand, pulled the quilt, and continued to close her eyes to rest. This setup was not without reason. After reading the information of the two servant girls, she felt that these two things should be kept a distance. These two maidservants often framed other girls. It was said that a maid who shared a room with them was forced to jump into a well. She even spread a rumor that she was having an affair with another maidservant, forcing her to hang herself. When they were transferred to the original owner's courtyard, there was no lack of ridicule and bullying. After she finished reading the information, of course, she was completely unmoved. Her reason for framing them was because she was bored to kill time. Her hobbies are just so plain and boring. When Lu Xinglan arrived at the courtyard, looking at this shabby, lifeless, and dilapidated courtyard, he frowned slightly. The doctor had already been called over. It was Mother Lu. Nothing in the backyard could escape Mother Lu's eyes. When he heard that Wei Wei Bai was like this, he just calmly called for a doctor to take a look. This was already considered to be condescending. Because Wei Wei Bai was his son's medicine, he was showing the greatest kindness. Lu Xinglan walked into the room, an empty and shabby room. When she walked behind the screen, she saw a basket of begonia flowers, a plate of purple jasmine flowers, and impatiens flowers on the table. There was a small white stone mortar with a few flowers in it. So, she was making rouge? Lu Xinglan thought of the delicate skin on the girl's face, but she didn't see any traces of makeup. But her lips were red, unusually full and beautiful. She probably put on lipstick made of these petals. Lu Xinglan didn't say anything. She just looked down at the flowers for a while. To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click on Save. Chapter 2772. Then he walked to the bedside. The doctor had already gone to boil the medicine. It would take some time for the medicine to be brought over. He was the only one in the room. She was supposed to be served by someone since she was promoted. But the scene in front of him was unexpectedly bleak. A small courtyard, a quiet room. In this small world, there was not a single place that looked gorgeous. Even a sip of hot water couldn't be drunk. Lu Xinglan reached out and pinched the curtain with his fingers. He was about to open it, but he heard the girl's soft and sweet voice on the bed. Who is it? Lu Xinglan didn't say anything. He just stared at the curtain darkly. It was as if he could see the slim figure inside through the aqua-green curtain. The person inside was stunned. Young master. Lu Xinglan was a little surprised. I didn't know you were so familiar with me. There were no footsteps, and the curtain wasn't transparent. He stood outside and didn't even open the curtain. She knew who he was? Lu Xinglan's eyes darkened dangerously. After a moment of silence, a soft voice sounded in an embarrassed manner. Because of the smell on young master, Lu Xinglan stood outside. Smell. Wei Wei Bai's weak voice contained a hint of a smile. It smells good, very good. Only young master has a smell. Lu Xinglan stood in front of the bed. The door was open, and his slender figure was elongated by the light. He was silent for a while before he said slowly, I don't know what smell I have on me, but he probably knew what smell he had. He had been using sandalwood recently. This smell had probably seeped into his clothes. She actually smelled the smell on him and remembered it clearly. Lu Xinglan's calm eyes fluctuated a little. His fingertips passed through the gap in the curtain and were about to open it a little. But he heard an anxious voice from inside. Don't open it, young master. Lu Xinglan didn't take it seriously. Why? Can't I see the wind? But there was no wind in the room. After a long time, her weak pleading voice came from inside. It's ugly. I'm afraid it will scare you. Lu Xinglan was expressionless, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. Oh, how ugly. Is she so ugly that her face rots and her bones are exposed? Or is she so bald that she can become a nun? Or Was there worms on her skin? Wei Wei Bai, was this a problem of ugliness? Wasn't this what a rotten corpse looked like? When he thought about how Lu Xinglan had been on the battlefield for many years, he could only forgive his poor analogy. She silently pulled the blanket up to her nose and covered most of her face. Red marks on one's face were also considered ugly. Lu Xinglan successfully reminded her of the fear of rotten face. Maybe he knew he would scare her. Lu Xinglan frowned, but didn't say anything else. He only said indifferently, "I'm here to pick you up today." These words sounded a little awkward. However, Lu Xinglan was so calm that she didn't show any signs of discomfort. Seeing that she was so stupid that she was poisoned, he didn't want to argue with her. Moreover, there were only so many tricks in the harem. The reason was usually jealousy. He made her feel envious. Therefore, he personally brought her to his courtyard to express his attitude. She should be happy. Therefore, Lu Xinglan waited for the girl to thank him sweetly and happily. After waiting for a while, he found that it was terrifyingly quiet inside. Lu Xinglan sensed that something was wrong. He frowned and immediately lifted the curtain. Slash. Chapter 2773. Lu Xinglan didn't say anything. His face was even a little dark. The random touching just now made him very uncomfortable. His body also heated up. This kind of heat was so hot that he started to feel uncomfortable. He was very uncomfortable with this kind of impulsive heat. His breathing also heated up. Lu Xinglan thought that she was just confused by the fever and might calm down later. But when his attention was focused on the poison on her body, a faint and warm aura slowly approached him. Because he couldn't speak, he had to work hard to maintain the circulation of his true energy. Lu Xinglan's other senses were magnified. For example, he could see that the girl was like a harmless rabbit, but she had the most destructive power, inching closer to his face. Her cherry-like lips were soft and fragrant, slowly pressing against his throat. She had no idea what she had provoked. She even used her soft lips to rub against his Adam's apple in confusion. Lu Xinglan's Adam's apple moved, and he felt that his throat was dry. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes in confusion. She didn't know what this was and moved up uninterestedly. She struggled until the end and finally used her lips to press against the corner of his mouth in a daze. It was a simple touch. She left as soon as she touched him. The soft and sweet taste made Lu Xinglan at a loss for a moment. Then there was nothing. He almost messed up his true energy, and both of them were going to be injured. If it was someone else, he would have slapped her to lie flat. But this girl was so soft, and her bones were so weak. He was afraid that if he used the wrong strength, he would beat her flat. Lu Xinglan, who had always been decisive, hesitated for a moment. With this hesitation, he could only let Wei Wei Bai act like a tyrant. She touched his tiger tail and played with it like a feather duster. Lu Xinglan slowly withdrew his true energy. He could finally speak. "If you move again, I'll throw you out." His words were full of threat, but because his tone was too gentle, it seemed neither fish nor fowl. The muddle-headed girl didn't understand at all. She kissed the corner of his lips again with effort. Only the corner of his lips. It was still a light touch and left. Lu Xinglan only felt that this kind of contact was too light, but there was also an irresistible numbness. His fingers, one by one, began to leave her back, just as he was about to lift her away. His back tightened as the girl hugged him tightly with both hands. As if she was having a nightmare, the corners of her eyes turned red as she said in an aggrieved voice, "Young master, don't kick me, I." Lu Xinglan looked at her silently, a layer of watery light appearing in her eyes. The girl finally stuttered shyly, "I want to give birth to your child." Lu Xinglan, she closed her eyes and thought that she was in a dream. "I want to leave you a legacy so that you can live well," he murmured to himself, like a butterfly falling in the breeze. She fell into the man's heart just like that. It wasn't that she wanted to give birth to a child, but that she actually dreamt of doing it for his own good. Since when were the maidservants so loyal? Lu Xinglan thought calmly, but her movements were a little hurried. She pressed her onto the bed. He lifted the blanket and covered her with it. The girl's eyes were closed, and her eyelashes were trembling. She seemed to be unable to sleep well. However, the red marks on his skin had already disappeared. Lu Xinglan lowered her head and stared at her silently for a long time. Finally, his hoarse voice sounded as if it had been touched by fire. "You like me so much that you want to have a child with me?" After saying this, he frowned and held his breath. She was confused by the fever. Why was he also fooling around? Lu Xinglan slowly exhaled a hot breath, trying to calm his mind. He heard the sound of footsteps coming from afar. It was probably a maidservant or a doctor. Lu Xinglan was about to stand up when he found that the corner of his clothes was being pulled. He turned around and saw the sleeping girl clutching the corner of his clothes tightly with her fingers. Her soft and pink fingers pinched his clothes, and the color of blue veins appeared on the back of her hand. It was all in the dream. She even wanted to catch him, even if she died. Lu Xinglan was silent for a while, then sat back down. He didn't touch her, but his pair of eyes, which had always been gloomy and calm, fell on her body. There was also a trace of imperceptible warmth. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 10. Takama. Chapter 2774. Lu Xinglan was sitting. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Master." It was a female servant. She was holding a bowl of medicine. She looked gentle and careful. It was just that her smile was a little flattering. Lu Xinglan didn't even look up. His gaze continued to fall on the small hand that was grabbing his clothes tightly. The woman's hand was indeed small, but thinking of the women at the border who fetched water or did manual labor, they were all big and round. Some of their hands were even thicker than his. He immediately twitched the corner of his mouth. Perhaps it was a certain type of woman who had small hands. Lu Xinglan's eyes were half closed. His thin and long eyelashes were more exquisite than a girl's. His pale face was also unusually handsome. The female servant who came and secretly sized him up and immediately blushed. She saw that he didn't touch Wei Wei by that vixen, but was sitting. Instead, it was that vixen who was grabbing his clothes tightly. It seemed that the old madam was wrong when she said that Wei Wei Bai could touch Lu Xinglan. If he really touched her and didn't feel disgusted, how could the young master not touch her? The female servant smiled even more brightly. She went over and bowed delicately, deliberately showing her delicate waist. The medicine bowl in her hand seemed to be in slow motion as she threw it out, just like that. It flew straight to the bed. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes fluttered, and his expression turned cold. His fingers casually picked up a purple jasmine flower on the table beside him and flicked it straight at the medicine bowl. The bowl immediately shattered, and the power of the flower forced all the fragments of the medicine to splash back onto the female servant. The medicine was still warm. It immediately drenched the female servant's face. The female servant immediately reached out to cover her face and cried out in pain. Lu Xinglan looked over, his eyes so cold that frost appeared. The female servant took advantage of the pain and immediately bowed down. She reached out to grab Lu Xinglan's trousers. In this backyard, who wasn't here to serve Lu Xinglan? When they came, they were all chosen by Mother Lu. Charming and charming. How were they cut out to be servants? Mother Lu had also clearly said that whoever could serve Lu Xinglan, no matter what method, they would be given a high status. These people were all here to be Lu Xinglan's women. She wasn't here to be a servant who couldn't see a man in the backyard. Therefore, even though she couldn't see Lu Xinglan in the backyard, she still couldn't see Lu Xinglan. But there was also a foul atmosphere, strife among each other, framing others everywhere. It was just to reduce the number of women. When Lu Xinglan returned in the future, he would have a chance to climb up the social ladder. Wen Bai Weiwei was promoted to the position of Little Master. Everyone laughed at this. After all, without Lu Xinglan's acknowledgement, he was no different from them. In the end, Mother Lu went around rewarding people last night, saying that Wei Wei Bai had been touched by Lu Xinglan. The days of the Lu family's future were just around the corner. In an instant, all the female servants in the backyard were filled with resentment. She wished that Wei Wei Bai would be struck to death by lightning on the spot. Of course, She was not a fool. She was not going to cozy up to Wei Wei Bai in advance so that Wei Wei Bai could trust her. She followed Wei Wei Bai into Lu Xinglan's courtyard. In the days to come, there would be plenty of opportunities to climb into Lu Xinglan's bed. Who knew that Wei Wei Bai would be poisoned today and lie in bed waiting for death? This was what it meant to be unlucky. She deserved it. Wei Wei Bai probably would not be able to enter Lu Xinglan's courtyard. Then she would have to pick up her pace and rely on herself. If Wei Wei Bai could do it, then so could she. Although the female servant's face was in pain, her smile was exceptionally sweet. She lay on the ground and slowly reached out to touch Lu Xinglan. She kept saying softly, "Master, this servant is clumsy. Please punish me." Lu Xinglan's eyes were clear and calm as she looked down at the woman beside her feet. Chapter 2775. He frowned, and a disgusted expression appeared on his face. His voice was indifferent. "Do you know I'm sick?" When the servant heard this, she immediately nodded. "This servant knows that master is not fond of women, but that's because you haven't touched them. Men are all like this at first, but once you touch them, you won't say anything bad. Once you touch them, you won't say anything bad." His eyebrows raised slightly. The servant crawled forward a little more, and her fingers finally touched the man's pants. In the next second, the servant was kicked out. She directly rushed to the door, hit the threshold, and rolled out. Wei Wei Bai had just woken up and saw this scene. She and the system were both silent for a while. "I'd better go back to sleep," Wei Wei Bai said expressionlessly. "Go back to sleep." The system also agreed. This male lead's cruelty made people speechless. After Lu Xinglan kicked the servant out, he turned around calmly. He hated women the most. When that woman approached him, he was so disgusted that he had goosebumps all over his body. She wanted to come closer. It was like seeing a disgusting insect poison, almost uncontrollable. He attacked. He continued to stare at his clothes calmly at that delicate hand, much more pleasing to the eye. Then he followed the hand and looked up. The girl was still asleep, but the red marks on her face and the faint greenish-gray color from the poison had disappeared. The effect of the true energy to force the poison was immediate, and she was already out of danger. He was not surprised. The doctor's prescription should be changed. It was fine not to drink the antidote. The sun gradually rose. The sun shone through the screen and into the bed. The girl's face was like a delicate flower, because it lacked the seductive charm when she opened her eyes. It had the pure beauty of a white pearl. The man stared at her face for a long time, and his dark eyes had a trace of curiosity. Just a touch, and she liked it? His thin lips slightly pursed, and a slight arc appeared. Then he slowly reached out and touched her fingers. Because she had been holding on to his clothes for too long, her fingers were a little stiff. Holding on like this, her blood was not flowing smoothly, and it should be very uncomfortable. Strange, how could he grab onto her like this in his dream? The man's fingers hooked around her fingertips. Then, he slowly removed her strength and gathered her fingers into his palm. Even though his fingers looked white, they were still white. However, he spent many years fighting and riding horses at the border. In fact, a layer of calluses had already formed on his palm. The girl's fingers were too soft, like those of a baby. As a result, he didn't dare to use too much strength when holding it, for fear that he would crush it. Just like that, they held each other for a long time. Soft, this was the only feeling he had. Other than that, he didn't feel disgusted. Lu Xinglan knew last night that she didn't feel disgusted by her. But every time he touched her, he would still be careful. He was afraid that if he didn't feel disgusted today, what if he felt disgusted tomorrow? Lu Xinglan didn't feel disgusted. She carefully pinched her soft knuckles and touched them. It was very easy to touch. The calluses on his hands rubbed against her skin until it turned red. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes suppressed the light in her eyes. Her hands felt like they could be compared to cotton. With such hands, he might not even be able to lift half a bucket of water. If they were at the border or in the snow, they would probably freeze to death within a few hours. Because his body was weak, a strong body was abnormally hard. He couldn't help but frown when he thought of something else. Could it be that he could take her to the border? He actually thought so far ahead. /full text download / to facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 2776. Lu Xinglan touched her hand and couldn't help but look at her face. That strange touch from last night was still fresh in his mind. He pursed his thin lips. He wasn't nervous, but he was so careful that he didn't dare to exert any strength. His hands slowly came to her face. His fingertips touched her eyelashes. They were soft too, but everyone's eyelashes were soft. Lu Xinglan thought expressionlessly. The only difference was that her eyelashes were especially long. This was also the reason why the shadows at the corners of her eyes were longer, making her more charming and seductive. Lu Xinglan's fingertips landed on the tip of her nose and tapped it. Could he press it down? He was like a child who was playing games for the first time. He was focused and even had an unconscious excitement. Just as he was about to continue, he touched her lips. A cold voice sounded from outside. "Young master, are you leaving?" It was Xian Wu's voice. Lu Xinglan's eyebrows twitched, and he quickly withdrew his fingers. Then he said calmly and elegantly, "Yes, let's go." After saying that, he turned to leave, but he thought of something and hesitated. He turned back again and looked at the girl on the bed with deep eyes. Finally, he convinced himself. Anyway, they were going to his courtyard. He had to go early to prevent her from being poisoned again. Next time, he had to force the poison out. Lu Xinglan maintained an indifferent expression. He bent down and carefully held her waist with one hand, and the other hand was on her back. He gently carried her up just like that, light like a feather. Lu Xinglan's sword was probably heavier than hers. He snorted in disdain. Wei Bai, what did he dislike about her in that tone of disdain? Did he dislike that she was too pretty? Was he jealous? Just now, his fingers touched her face like a fly. Could it be that he was thinking of ways to disfigure her? After all, this target was a little crazy. Who knew if he was narcissistic? Anyway, there weren't many targets who weren't perverted. To round it off, they were all perverts. It was such a simple and crude division. Lu Xinglan carried her and wrapped her in a blanket. When he walked out, he saw the women in the courtyard, the ones in the corridor, the ones by the railings, the ones hidden outside the door, among the flowers, and the one on the roof. Mother Lu left all the women in the backyard for him so that he could have a future. After so long, these women finally saw him. She was afraid that she would never see him again after he left. He immediately rushed over. The maid who was dragged away frightened them. They didn't dare to approach and could only stand outside the door, dressed gorgeously. It was as gorgeous as seducing peacocks. Lu Xinglan's footsteps faltered as her expression darkened. Her brows were tightly knitted together. He ordered coldly, "Little Exon, tell them to scram." With so many women around, he was afraid that he would throw up after a few steps. It was better to vomit. If he was provoked too much, he wouldn't be able to suppress his urge to draw his sword and slash people. Xian Wu also knew his problem. He glanced at the girl in Lu Xinglan's arms and raised his eyebrows in confusion. Then, Xian Wu did not say anything and immediately pulled out a horsewhip to open the way. The women immediately turned pale with fright and fled. Lu Xinglan walked out expressionlessly with Wei Bai in her arms. When he stepped out of the backyard, she heard Lu Xinglan's cold voice. "Those who offend nature and reason, find out and deal with them." Under his banner, he did not have the habit of letting people mess around in his house. As for the rest, arrange for them to go home and get married. Mother Lu had always been unreliable. Chapter 2777. This kind of thing of keeping so many women to be his widows. He should do less in the future. When a woman is lonely and crazy, she can do anything. The most vicious means often come from the harem. This kind of suffering was best known to the royal family. Lu Xinglan returned to his courtyard and suddenly found a terrible thing. There was only one bed in his room. He held the girl and was in a daze for a long time before his eyes slowly fell on a recliner. The chair was long and uncomfortable. Wei Bai woke up for a while and saw how Lu Xinglan kicked people away. It confirmed his rumored ferocity. Then she went back to sleep. After all, In her sleep, she pulled a string of consciousness and grabbed the corner of Lu Xinglan's clothes with her hand. But she practiced many times before she could do it so naturally. They were all people who made a living. It was not a big deal when they were familiar with it. They could do it automatically. Being poisoned also consumed energy. She slept until night before she got up with a yawn. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw the page boy staring at her with a poker face. Wei Wei Bai was also speechless. Finally, the page boy said, "You're awake." Wei Wei Bai said, "Yes." The page boy brought a plate with a bowl of porridge on it. "Eat. You can't eat too much after being poisoned. Eat tomorrow." The page boy explained as if he was reciting a book. It was dry. Wei Wei Bai was indeed hungry. She held the bowl and chopsticks and said in a low voice, "Thank you." The page boy said indifferently, "I'll get some meat for you tomorrow." Then he turned around and left. When he went out, he whispered disdainfully, "His voice is so soft. He must not have eaten enough meat and is starving." Wei Wei Bai. She held the bowl and sat on the chair. The chair was a little high. Her feet carefully touched the balance beam under the chair. Then she lowered her head and ate small mouthfuls. Suddenly, the broken beads were blown by the wind. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered. She looked up and saw the man coming in through the beaded curtain. He had just finished bathing, and his ink-black hair was draped behind his back. His slender eyelashes were full of wet mist, which made his eyes look dark and deep. It was exceptionally pure and beautiful. He saw the girl sitting on the chair and, sipping porridge, staring at him blankly. Lu Xinglan's expression froze. Then, he couldn't help but stand with his hands behind his back. He said coldly, "From now on, you will live here." Wei Wei Bai held the bowl and buried her face in it. Her ears turned red as she looked up and said in a low voice, "Yes, young master." Lu Xinglan didn't say anything, as if she was afraid that he would feel uncomfortable. Instead, she turned around and went to the desk to read. He leaped onto the sandalwood bench with a book in his hand. The chair creaked. The surroundings were silent. The two were speechless. Lu Xinglan flipped through the book and peeked at her from the corner of her eye. He found that she had finished the porridge and placed the bowl on the table silently. Then she fumbled in the cuff. Her lotus-like wrist stretched out cleanly from the cuff. He stared at her beautiful wrist and found that she only took out a handkerchief and wiped her cherry-red lips. Clean and seductive. Under the light, the beauty was even more beautiful. Lu Xinglan rocked the chair and pulled his attention back to the military book. But from time to time, his eyes would stray away from home and look at the girl sitting under the light. He was curious about her. It definitely wasn't any special emotion. It was rare to find someone who wasn't disgusting, so he was curious. Lu Xinglan thought calmly. Finally, it was about time. He put away the book and said coldly, "Why aren't you resting? You're poisoned and your body is weak. If you don't sleep, you'll drag down your body." "Do you want me to buy a coffin for you?" Wei Wei Bai was sitting obediently on the chair and didn't dare to move. She immediately shook her head and said anxiously, "No need, no need. I have my own money to buy it. I don't need young master's money." Lu Xinglan, the Chapter 2778. Was she cursing herself? After Wei Wei Bai finished speaking, she also felt that something was wrong and immediately shut up. Lu Xinglan felt that her reserved manner was probably because she had been oppressed badly, so she didn't dare to move. He got up and walked in front of her. Then he bent down and picked her up. Wei Wei Bai's face was red as she looked at him shyly. Lu Xinglan put her on the bed. When he left, he felt that the softness and warmth of the girl's body were leaving, making him a little reluctant. He frowned and left without saying anything. However, he saw the girl squatting obediently, not daring to go down to sleep. Instead, she opened her charming eyes and stared at him eagerly. "Young master, aren't you going to sleep?" The girl's voice was gentle and had a hint of pleading, as if she was seducing him. Lu Xinglan slowly swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He was going to sleep on the bench. She was originally his person. Once she entered his courtyard, she wouldn't be able to marry anyone. So, It didn't matter if he touched her. Lu Xinglan expressionlessly reached out and unbuttoned his clothes. His fingertips were a little stiff. Fortunately, Wei Wei Bai couldn't see it. He peeled off his clothes, revealing a thin white shirt. The man didn't say a word and was about to go to bed. However, he saw Wei Wei Bai immediately roll up the blanket and place in the middle. She gave small space. She gave him more than half of the space. Wei Wei Bai revealed a gentle and sweet smile and said considerately, "I know that young master hates women, but you want to treat your illness. Let's do it step by step. I won't touch young master. This way, you'll feel better." Lu Xinglan's impatient hand froze and then retracted it as if nothing had happened. He said calmly, "Okay." Then he lay down and thought frantically. He didn't show too much desire just now, right? He didn't, right? Wei Wei Bai also smiled and lay down. Soon, the sound of her small breathing could be heard. Lu Xinglan opened his eyes and saw the blanket in the middle. He pursed his lips. He reached out and carefully pulled away. Suddenly, the girl turned over. His movements were stiff, and he didn't dare to move. The next moment, she suddenly leaned over and burrowed into his embrace. Like a kitten, she rubbed against his chest. Then he continued to sleep. Lu Xinglan, after hesitating for a long time, his hand gently landed on her back. The man calmly thought that she was the one who had leaned over, not him. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 15. Lu Xinglan opened her eyes and saw that the sky outside was still dark. He was carrying a person in his arms, who was as soft as a cotton ball. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly lowered his eyes and saw the side of the girl's face leaning against his chest, her long hair spread out on his arm. Her eyelashes were tightly shut, and her fair cheeks were slightly flushed. Lu Xinglan carefully extended her finger and poked at the red halo. It was neither hot nor soft. Girls, why are they so soft everywhere? Could it be that his bones were soft too? That shouldn't be the case. After all, if they were really soft, they wouldn't be able to walk anymore. However, the skeleton was like a cat, which was indeed beyond his imagination. When he was disgusted with women, he felt like he was looking at a bedbug when he saw them. He didn't pay attention to what these women looked like at all, not to mention paying attention to whether or not they were soft, whether or not their bones were small. Lu Xinglan noticed that her eyelashes were trembling, so he immediately retracted his finger as if nothing had happened. Then he saw her bright red lips pursed, as if she was thirsty. She even licked the corner of her lips with the tip of her tongue. Lu Xinglan watched expressionlessly. His eyes were extremely dark. Wei Wei Bai didn't wake up. She moved with difficulty, then turned over and continued to sleep. Slash. Chapter 2779. Lu Xinglan saw her with his back facing her. He didn't know if he should straighten her up and carry her again, or just let her lie like this. And it was almost dawn. Lu Xinglan glanced at the messy bed. Then he looked at the blanket that was rolled up like salted vegetables kicked to the side. He reached out and pulled the blanket over. Then, he rolled the blanket up with a calm expression. He tried to put the long blanket in the middle, but she was lying too close. With this, there was almost no space left. Lu Xinglan held the blanket and pursed his thin lips. Then, he tried to gently place his fingers on the girl's thin back. He wanted her to sleep a little more inside. But just as his palm touched the thin back, he felt the heat spread to his palm. He stiffened for a while before retracting his fingers. Forget it. If he pushed her like this, she would definitely wake up. Lu Xinglan could only try to put the blanket in the middle. Then, half of his body was almost hanging outside. To sleep like this, Lu Xinglan thought with a calm expression. Then, he looked sideways and stared at Wei Wei Bai's back. That thin shoulder line and the exquisite outline of her collarbone seemed to be faintly discernible. The lines of her clothes extended down her beautiful back, until her waist. Lu Xinglan's fingers moved, and he resisted the urge to measure her waist. It was very thin. He looked at it for a long time. The sky was slightly bright. Then, he heard Wei Wei Bai move, as if she was about to wake up. He immediately closed his eyes and maintained a posture that looked difficult but was actually very easy for him. He lay on his side and leaned against the edge of the bed. He closed his eyes, and his breathing stabilized. Then, he heard the girl behind him seem to be a little puzzled. Then, she was silent for a while. Lu Xinglan didn't close his eyes calmly. Then, he felt a pair of hands gently touching his back. He forced himself not to stiffen instinctively. Did she want to touch him? In the end, the fingers only brushed past him lightly. Then, he felt the blanket behind him being pulled back bit by bit. He was pushed very far outside. When the blanket was pulled away by her, it was pulled away. The sound of the blanket shaking could be heard. The blanket gently covered his body. Summer was hot. Even if there was no ice at night, one would still feel hot. So it didn't matter if he didn't cover himself with a blanket at night. However, in the early morning, the dew condensed and fell. Instead, it became colder. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes didn't move, and her expression was still as calm as if she was really asleep. He felt the girl's fingertips lightly sweep across his body before withdrawing. She seemed to have no idea that her kind of contact was to him. Like feathers, they tickled everywhere. After covering him with a blanket, he seemed to want to get off the bed. She hesitated for a moment, then carefully stretched out her leg and crossed over his waist. His breathing became a little erratic. Because her feet didn't seem to be able to find a foothold, he silently moved his waist. Her small feet just happened to have a place to step on. She did not seem to notice his subtle movements. Gently, she continued to slowly cross his body and was just about to cross his other leg. Lu Xinglan held her breath, not daring to move. The clothes on her body swept past his body. There was no weight to it, but it was a little hard for him to bear. The girl on top of him was finally about to cross his other leg and get off the bed. However, she neglected a serious matter. He slept two outside, and half of his body was suspended in the air. Her other foot could step on the edge of the bed, and it was because he struggled to move the little space on his waist for her. To read the full article at https://www.sashu.com fast to TXT download at https://www.sashu.com fast to read on your phone. https://m sashu. To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the fast comma. Chapter 2780. She wanted to get off the bed and rely on her own strength to not touch him. Unless she jumped off the bed directly, there was no edge for her to use. So all of a sudden, her legs missed a step. She was about to fall to the ground head first. A hand suddenly appeared and grabbed her by the collar, dragging her back. Wei Bai suddenly crashed into a warm embrace. She was stunned. The man was also hit, and his chest felt a little stuffy. She was stunned for a moment. Almost without giving the other party a chance to touch her, she reached out to push him away and rushed off the bed. She didn't even take off her shoes. With a head of messy hair, she looked back blankly. However, she saw that the man was still sitting. His thin clothes were open, revealing a large area of white skin on his chest. He looked at her calmly, but there was an indescribable emotion in his eyes. It seemed like he was being despised. He was surprised. Wei Bai immediately went barefoot to bring a spittoon over. "Young master, do you want to vomit?" Lu Xinglan's face. Wei Bai put the spittoon on the bed with a worried expression. "Why, I touched you just now. Did you feel disgusted? If you feel disgusted, don't hold it in. Let's do it slowly. You won't be able to stand it if we get too intimate." His illness of being disgusted with women. It was too famous. When someone mentioned Lu Xinglan, it wasn't his literary talent or martial arts talent. It was his strange illness of being disgusted with women. Lu Xinglan looked at her silently for a while. He couldn't help but smile. "No, I feel like my illness is getting better." Wei Bai lowered her head helplessly and reached out to tug at her messy clothes. But when she heard that his illness was getting better, her beautiful eyes lit up, and she immediately looked up. She said softly, "Young master, is that true?" Lu Xinglan's gaze fell on her charming and seductive eyes, and he was stunned for a moment. Then he said calmly, "Yes, come closer to me. I'll see if it's an illusion." Bai Weiwei immediately ran to the bed in bare feet, as cheerful as a rabbit. She tried to reach out her hand, but hesitated. The man sitting on the bed had an unusually deep and cold gaze. The shape of his eyes was exceptionally beautiful. The slightly long and narrow ends of his eyes had an exceptionally delicate curve. He tilted his perfect jawline and pursed his soft, thin lips. His ink-black hair was casually draped over his shoulders. It was more casual than usual, and there was also a trace of evil that made people tremble. He saw her hesitate. Her pale red lips parted slightly. "What's wrong?" Wei Bai blushed and quickly stuttered. "It's okay. Don't you feel uncomfortable if I touch you there?" Lu Xinglan lowered her eyes, as if she was thinking about something. Then, he said in a low and gentle voice, "I'm not sure. You can touch them all." These words sounded like a hooligan. Unfortunately, the little white rabbit in front of him did not understand. Instead, she had a confused look on her face as she stretched out her soft and fair fingers and placed them on his shoulder, as if she was testing him. "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Lu Xinglan glanced to the side and saw her beautiful wrist on his shoulder. Slender, but with a sense of roundness. She was exceptionally cute. He looked at her for a while before slowly shifting his gaze away. "It's not that uncomfortable. Try touching something else." Wei Bai hesitated for a moment. Her fingertips trembled slightly as she gently touched his neck. His pulse seemed to be a little fast. Her fingers couldn't help but tremble. When the girl's fingers touched his neck, Lu Xinglan overreacted. People who came from the battlefield, they valued their own fatal parts very much. Chapter 2781. If someone were to touch a vital part of the body would instinctively resist. But this thought of resisting disappeared very quickly. More importantly, the temperature of her fingertips was very comfortable. Lu Xinglan did not move but said in a low voice, "You can continue." The girl's fingers stiffened for a moment, but she still obeyed his order and continued to move up. Her fingertips gently landed on his chin. Her touch was so soft. It was as if she was afraid of hurting him. Her fingertips followed his chin and moved up to his soft, thin lips. His lips were very tight, as if he was enduring something. The girl's fingers paused. Her beautiful eyes carried a trace of pure love that could not be suppressed. It was not a love that was so earth-shattering that she would risk her life for him. It was shallow and faint, but it was an exceptionally pure love. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes trembled, and his face was slightly red. Her gentle gaze was like a kiss that fell on the tip of his heart. It was destroying his woman's defenses bit by bit. If he had been a little apprehensive about touching her before, but now she knew that he really did not dislike her. Lu Xinglan stared at the girl's face that was close to his. She was serious and shy. She was unusually concerned about his condition. She asked nervously in a low voice, "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Lu Xinglan pursed his lips and said with a frown, "I seem to be able to accept more of this level of touch." Wei Bai was confused. "Accept more?" Lu Xinglan thought for a moment, and was unusually calm and natural. He reached out his fingertips and lifted her face. Then he lowered his head. His thin red lips touched hers. He knew it was soft. She was soft everywhere. The girl's breath was unusually clean. There was a hint of floral fragrance. Her breathing suddenly became chaotic, and her body trembled uncontrollably. Her face was so red that it was about to explode. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes trembled, and he gently let go of her. Then the man calmly looked into her eyes, as if he had done something very normal. "Well, I don't feel uncomfortable. Maybe my condition has improved a little." Wei Bai stammered nervously. Is that so?" Lu Xinglan said seriously. "Really?" Wei Bai said helplessly. "Very good. As long as young master is good, I'm good." After saying that, she nervously reached out to tuck her hair behind her ear, but he was too flustered, and his fingers trembled nonstop. Her hair was getting messier and messier. Lu Xinglan reached out her hand, her slender fingers slowly caressing the messy hair on her face. Then, she brushed past her flushed face strand by strand, trailed behind those exquisite and adorable ears. Wei Bai did not dare to move. She could only lower her head and let him tidy up. Lu Xinglan also knew that she had scared her, although she looked charming. However, it didn't mean that her temperament was as mature. She should still be young. Lu Xinglan smiled. Go and wash up. There's a room for you in the courtyard. Last night was a special occasion. After all, other than Xian Wu, no one else was allowed to enter his courtyard. That was why so many rooms were covered in dust. Xian Wu had probably tidied up a house today. Wei Wei Bai immediately nodded and wanted to walk out. In the end, 2 fingers calmly pinched the clothes at the back of her waist. You put on your shoes and coat before you go out. Xian Wu was outside. She was a girl. How could she be so disheveled? Wei Wei Bai was stunned. She immediately turned around and put on her shoes. Her small feet slipped into the embroidered shoes. Lu Xinglan leaned against the bed, his beautiful eyes slightly narrowed. It seemed casual, but also seemed deliberate. His gaze never left her. Wei Wei Bai put on her shoes and put on her outer robe. Her waist was slender and pleasing to the eye. Young master, I'll leave first. Her back was facing him. She stood in the faint light of the morning sun. Her black hair was like satin, and her figure was exquisite and petite. She was like the reeds in the water, and as fragrant as the purple jasmine flower she used to make rouge. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes, hiding the surprise and the desire to plunder in his eyes. He lowered his voice. Go! Wei Wei Bai lowered her head and walked out in small steps. Her skirt swayed as she walked out. When she reached the door, she put her hand on the edge of the porch and casually turned around. The girl's delicate face was exceptionally beautiful in the light. She glanced at him and couldn't help but smile happily. Then she stepped out. That smile was full of charm, but also pure and natural. Lu Xinglan was stunned for a moment. His heartbeat was somewhat uncontrollable and accelerated. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 20. Slash. Chapter 2782. The house was on the west side of the courtyard, only a short corridor away from Lu Xinglan's house. There was a carp pond in the middle. There were withered flowers everywhere. Yes, the most powerful person in the Lu family, the only successor, lived in such a messy place. Because Lu Xinglan didn't allow others to enter his courtyard. Not a single female servant was allowed to enter. Mother Lu didn't allow men either, because he didn't like women in the first place. If he brought more men to serve him, wouldn't he forget the good things about women? So it made his life a little more difficult. He could think of female servants. In the end, Lu Xinglan only let Xian Wu take care of his own house. The rest of the place was left in ruins, and no one was allowed to enter to serve him. Whoever came in, he would just kick them out with a single kick. Lu Xinglan only cared about that small place of his. The rest of the place had nothing to do with him. So when Wei Wei Bai opened the window, she saw withered leaves fluttering outside. In the middle of the day, there were weeds and wildflowers outside. Those who didn't know would think that they lived on the top of a mountain. She held a round fan and fanned to be away. There were many miscellaneous flowers, and there were also many butterflies and bees. Wei Wei Bai felt that it was so annoying. Butterflies and bees were fine, but there would definitely be many mosquitoes at night. No wonder there was incense everywhere in Lu Xinglan's house. This was to smoke mosquitoes. Wei Wei Bai rested her head by the window, looking bored. Lu Xinglan, who was wearing a black robe, walked out of the house with handsome features. When he passed by the corridor, he saw one of the girl's arms resting gently by the window. Her wrist was so white that it was shining. Her face was slightly tilted, and her face was flushed because of the heat. Her black hair was like dark satin, falling on her shoulders. He stopped in his tracks. Hiding by the corridor, she didn't see him. A butterfly flew over and landed on the flower hairpin in her hair. The flowers on her head were all fresh. They were casually picked from the courtyard. The butterfly treated the flowers on her head as its resting place. She didn't move, as if she was dying. In this weather, the house was indeed a little hot. There wasn't much wind today. Lu Xinglan frowned slightly. His gaze swept across her slightly hot cheeks and the wrist hanging by the window. It was exquisite, like a piece of warm jade. Lu Xinglan's gaze lingered on him for a while before she looked away and silently walked in another direction. Wei Wei Bai looked up and looked in the direction Lu Xinglan left. She didn't have any intention of moving. Instead, he slowly fanned himself with a circular fan. It was too hot. She was too lazy to move. She would wait until it was cooler at night to capture this heartless dog. There were a few big cold basins of Lu Xian's. There were also those with incense, mosquito nets, and gauze nets. He enjoyed it. Then, she was given an empty room. Only was Lu Xian. The rest of the furniture looked as if it had been moved in from other rooms. She didn't have any girly things at all. She sighed. This kind of man needed to be trained. When Lu Xinglan entered the palace, she rode a horse and galloped through the palace gates. The palace guards at the gate respectfully stepped aside. Lu Xinglan's outstanding achievements were not enough to describe Lu Xinglan's contributions. The Southern Empire had always been suppressed by the North. Every year, they would send a large amount of tribute to the North. The Lu family was the only pillar of support for the Southern Empire. It was also the only barrier preventing the Northern Empire from taking over the Southern Empire. But in the face of the increasingly powerful Northern Empire, the Southern Empire's predicament was still precarious. When Lu Xinglan was young, all the men in the Lu family died in battle. You can see it next time you open the bookshelf, if you like. Chapter 2783. Relying on the Lu family's prestige. That gave Lu Xinglan the time to grow up. The Lu family's reputation among the people was much better than the royal families. Everyone felt at ease when they mentioned the Lu family. As long as the Lu family existed and the only man in the Lu family didn't die, the morale of the people in the south was still strong. That way, the southern nation would have morale, and the southern nation's weak army would dare to fight against the northern nation's cavalry. After Lu Xinglan grew up, he completely reversed the disadvantage of the Southern Empire. He was the first to beat the Northern Empire to a pulp. He was even the general who seized and harvested the territory of the Northern Empire. Last year, they had won 3 consecutive battles and had almost destroyed the northern country. If the Northern Empire hadn't immediately surrendered and returned all the silver given by the Southern Empire, there were also all kinds of bribes to the imperial court and the royal family. The Northern Empire would probably have been destroyed by Lu Xinglan. For the Southern Empire, its current status as a hero came from Lu Xinglan's achievements. This was also the reason why the royal family hated him more and more. Lu Xinglan entered the palace and got off his horse. He entered the emperor's bedroom. The head eunuch immediately came over to take the horsewhip and said with a flattering smile, "General Lu, His Majesty is waiting for you." Lu Xinglan glanced at him indifferently. There was no trace of emotion on his indifferent and fair face. "Where's His Majesty?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Xinglan heard hurried footsteps. The current young emperor, Yuan Xian, ran over. He happily held a painting that was too horrible to look at and said cheerfully, "Xinglan, you're here. Look at my painting. Is it comparable to yours?" Lu Xinglan was good at zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was a genius. He glanced at the painting indifferently and bowed with a calm attitude before saying, "This subject's little tricks are not as good as His Majesty's at all." Yuan Xian immediately said, "Come on, don't be modest. Who doesn't know that your painting has been sold for a sky-high price?" These words were a little sarcastic. Yuan Xian immediately realized that his tone was wrong. He immediately changed his tone and said intimately, "I heard that you recently took in a concubine. How did you recover from your strange illness?" Lu Xinglan lowered his eyelashes. His eyes were extremely cold, but his tone was still indifferent. "It looks disgusting, but my mother couldn't stand it and forced it on me." Yuan Xian was relieved when he heard this. "That's right. You probably haven't met the right person with this illness. Our younger sister, Yuanda, is still waiting for you. When you're done with your treatment, let me know and I'll grant you a marriage." Lu Xinglan coldly raised her eyelashes. Her deep and cold eyes were like black stones at the bottom of the water, so beautiful that it was devoid of any human aura. He pursed his thin lips and smiled perfunctorily. "If I'm lucky enough to get better, I'll tell you, Your Majesty." Yuan Xian did not care about this. He pulled Lu Xinglan and walked inside. "Stay for a meal today. We haven't seen you in a long time." Lu Xinglan's expression was indifferent as she said flatly, "No, my mother is still waiting for me to return." Yuan Xian didn't force him. "I'm only here today to reward you with something. Take it and leave." After he finished speaking, a row of eunuchs stepped forward. There were all kinds of gold, silver, jewels, and supplements. Lu Xinglan glanced at him with disinterest, then bowed. "Your subject thanks Your Majesty." After saying that, he glanced at the sky. If he hurried back, he could still go back for lunch. He didn't know why, but the image of Wei Wei by leaning against the window with her thick eyelashes half-closed flashed in his mind. Humans were more delicate than flowers. When a butterfly landed on her head, she didn't know how to brush it away. // Chapter 2784. After the salute, he bid farewell and left. Lu Xinglan went straight up after leaving the emperor's bedroom. The eunuch happily came up and handed him a horsewhip. Lu Xinglan didn't even look at the eunuch. He pulled the reins and was about to leave. A young girl in a gorgeous dress hurried over. "Lu Xinglan, stop right there." Sitting on the horse, Lu Xinglan's cold eyes casually glanced down. It was Princess Yuanda. It was that woman with a vicious heart who looked like a piece of rotten meat to him. If he was to other women, he would be 10 times more disgusted. Then to Yuanda, he would be 100 times more disgusted. Yuanda ran over and immediately opened her hands to stop his horse. "Lu Xinglan, when are you going to marry me? I'm already 22, an old lady." Lu Xinglan looked down and looked at her indifferently. He didn't even frown. For this kind of woman, any emotion was a waste of energy. He didn't make any expression. Yuanda's face was full of anger. She adjusted her heavy golden hairpin. "I've been waiting for you for so many years. Where's your conscience? Today you have to go with me to Imperial Mother to ask for a decree and get married." Lu Xinglan's expression was incomparably cold. He slightly raised his chin and looked at her coldly. "Your Highness, this subject has to leave the palace. Please step aside." Yuanda immediately put her hands on her hips. "Where are you going? Looking for your concubine?" Lu Xinglan lowered his head. The summer light reflected in his ink-black eyes. Faint fluctuations of emotions appeared in those ink-black eyes. His voice was low and calm, but it was as bone-piercing as ice. "You shouldn't have the qualifications to care who I'm looking for. Princess is also old. Saying that you're waiting for me is just a cover for not being able to get married. After all, you know that I can't get close to women. Who would really like a man who hated women?" Yuanda was immediately enraged. His heavily rouged eyes glared at her. "Lu Xinglan, what do you mean? You hate women, but you treat me differently." Lu Xinglan looked at her indifferently. A trace of disgust appeared in his beautiful eyes. "I don't know how I treat the princess differently." Yuanda immediately said proudly, "You kick other women away, but you only hate me verbally. You never kick me. You treat me special. Besides, you hate women. It's just an illness. I can definitely cure you." After saying that, Yuanda thought of something and frowned. "Also, you hate women, so why do you still have a concubine by your side? If it was your mother, you could just kill her and throw her into the well and say that she accidentally fell into the water." Lu Xinglan's eyes were cold as he looked at her quietly. Then the corners of his mouth curled up. He wasn't happy, but he was full of mockery. "Sorry, it's my fault." Lu Xinglan's tone softened, and her voice was pleasant and seductive. "I'm willing to correct my mistakes." All Yuanda got were words of disgust from him. When had he ever seen him so amiable? She immediately ran over. "Lu Xinglan, are you going to marry me?" Lu Xinglan's icy gaze landed on her, and the horsewhip in her hand suddenly lashed out with all her might. Yuanda felt a sharp pain in her body and let out a scream. Lu Xinglan squeezed the horse's belly, and the horse ran forward. When it ran past Yuanda, he lowered his eyes slightly, and there was even a trace of viciousness and murderous intent in his eyes. Then Lu Xinglan raised his foot and kicked her out. Slash. Chapter 2785. This action came too fast, and no one could stop him. When everyone came back to their senses, only Princess Yuanda was lying on the ground and screaming at the door. Lu Xinglan, who was riding on a horse, disappeared at the entrance of the palace. Someone immediately called for the imperial doctor. Someone also ran to the palace to find the emperor. Yuan Xian was tearing up his painting with a smile. After hearing this, his face turned cold. Yuanda should be taught a lesson. Lu Xinglan is not someone she can provoke. She should take a look at herself. She's a slut that no one wants. Who didn't know that Yuanda had dozens of gigolos in the princess's residence? She had a part in the bad reputation of the imperial family. After saying this, Yuan Xian curled his lips coldly. Did you find that concubine's information? Is she really a servant? The head eunuch said respectfully, Yes, it was Mother Lu who forced it on you. Yuan Xian snorted. Lu Xinglan can forget about having children in this life. As long as the Lu family is alive, the imperial family will be suppressed. The head eunuch looked at the gloomy young emperor in front of him and didn't say anything. Instead, Yuan Xian said with a smile, My painting is not good. Kill the artist who taught me to paint. The head eunuch said, Yes, your majesty. Yuan Xian smiled innocently. All right, if Lu Xinglan really touches that concubine, send someone to kill her. Although he poisoned Lu Xinglan back then, he couldn't get close to the woman and cut off the Lu family's escape route. But who knew if the drug would suddenly lose its effect? The Lu family couldn't go on like this. Otherwise, he would have to live in Lu Xinglan's shadow for the rest of his life. Yuan Xian looked at the broken paintings gloomily. Then, he slowly parted his lips, revealing a childlike, cute, yet sinister smile. This country was his. Lu Xinglan couldn't take it away. Bai Weiwei sat and watched with an indifferent expression. Xin Wu was cooking. He quickly used a big kitchen knife to cut and classify all the vegetables. Weiwei Bai was washing the cabbage. There were only 2 of them in this courtyard. Lu Xinglan, that weirdo, didn't let people serve her. He didn't even want to eat in the big kitchen. Xin Wu had to do it himself. Weiwei Bai also wants to eat free food. Washing vegetables will wrinkle her hands, which is not good for her skin. But because of her character, she couldn't be lazy. She could only curse Lu Xinglan, that weirdo, while looking at Xin Wu's gorgeous way of cutting vegetables with admiration. The meal was ready. Xin Wu carried the food tray and headed straight for Lu Xinglan's room. Weiwei Bai also held a bowl and chopsticks and followed them eagerly. She was hungry. If she didn't eat now, she would eat someone. In the end, when they returned to Lu Xinglan's room and put down the bowl and chopsticks, they heard the sound of the door being kicked open in the courtyard. Xin Wu didn't even lift his eyelids. He set the table and disappeared. That speed was extremely fast. Weiwei Bai sat there with her chopsticks in a daze. She saw Lu Xinglan walking in quickly from the door. His face was cold and gloomy, and his beautiful eyes were filled with a cold light. He saw Weiwei Bai sitting at the table, her tender fingers holding a pair of chopsticks. The food on the table was steaming hot. He calmed down, and his tone finally softened. Did you specially cook for me? Weiwei Bai, this is a misunderstanding. If she cooked, the color of the food would definitely not be so normal. But there was no time for explanations. Lu Xinglan had already walked in front of him. His breathing was a little messy, and his thin lips were tightly pursed. He just stared at her blankly for a while. Suddenly, he reached out his slender fingers and gently touched the flower by her hair. His fingertips touched the flower, and it was excessively smooth. His exquisite eyelashes fluttered, and his tone was low and gentle. You like flowers so much. Does she like flowers? Wasn't it because she didn't have money to spend? Otherwise, Jinzan's hair would only match her beautiful face if she had a head full of tea leaves. This shabby wildflower would attract bees and butterflies. Weiwei Bai's eyes were like water. She lowered her head shyly and said softly, I didn't like to wear flowers on my head in the past. Lu Xinglan's fingertips ran through her thick hair, and the nausea in his chest was finally relieved. The disgust and the desire to vomit when he saw Yuanda just now was stirring up his internal organs and starting to hurt. But when he saw her and smelled her scent, he felt like he had obtained the antidote. His voice was soft and gentle. "Why do you like it again?" Wei Bai looked up at him hesitantly, and then quickly looked away. She smiled, and her voice was soft. "Because I want to see young master. My hair is too plain. It's not good." Lu Xinglan was stunned, and after a long time, he smiled. He suddenly lowered his head, his nose close to her hair, and his thin lips touching her forehead. She was stunned, but she heard the man's voice with a hint of fatigue and warmth. "The fragrance of flowers, it smells good. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 25. Is at https://www.sashu.com// comma. Chapter 2786. The rice was delicious. After Wei Bai finished eating, she finally understood why Lu Xinglan didn't want the dishes from the main kitchen. Xin Wu's cooking skills could let her eat 3 more bowls of rice. Of course, for the sake of her image, she ate 2.5 bowls. After eating, Lu Xinglan reached out and touched the flower on her hair. "Stay here tonight." He said this a little gloomily. Wei Bai blinked, a trace of nervousness in her round almond eyes, and her face was pink. Seeing her like this, Lu Xinglan's fingers trembled, and the flower was actually pulled down by his strength. The petals turned into pieces and fell to the ground. Lu Xinglan lowered his head and stared deeply at the flower on the ground. This flower was too easy to pull. Wei Bai immediately reached out and gently smoothed the somewhat messy hair on her temples. The young girl smiled sweetly. Her almond eyes were moist, and her face without makeup was delicate and white. Her voice was gentle and sweet with a smile. "It's okay, young master. Flowers are all like this. They fall after a day." It was just that when night came, the flowers began to lose their moisture and began to fall. Lu Xinglan stared at her smile, and after a long time, he lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, "Flowers are indeed not very sturdy." The young girl's jewelry was a little lacking. It was only then that he realized that her clothes and jewelry were unusually simple. It was just that he didn't like women, so he never paid attention to what women needed. He thought that she really liked flowers. Maybe it was just that she didn't have anything else to decorate. Thinking back, she lowered her head and softly said that it wasn't good to see him without hair. Lu Xinglan's dark eyes were a little sluggish, and then he turned around as if nothing had happened and said, "Go take a bath first. I asked Xin Wu to boil the water. My mother will often send this servant to check on you. If she finds out that you're not sleeping in the same room as me, she will punish her." This sentence was too caring. He hesitated for a moment, then changed his tone and said, "She will force me to interact with more women." When Wei Bai heard this, her slender eyelashes trembled and her face paled. However, she quickly forced a smile. "Yes, young master's illness is not completely healed yet. Too many women are not good for you." After saying that, she immediately said, "Then I'll go take a bath." After saying this, her face turned red. She felt that it was too ambiguous. Lu Xinglan glanced sideways at her, only to see her quicken her pace. Like a gust of wind, she ran past him. He was also silent for a moment. His thin lips couldn't help but curl up, revealing a light smile. Then, he walked away and came to the table to look at the map carefully. After watching for a while, he was distracted. After trying for a long time, Lu Xinglan finally looked up and remained silent. He pursed his thin lips tightly, and his eyes were extremely deep. Finally, as if he had confirmed something, he turned slightly to the side and said, "Little X, don't girls need something different from men?" Xin Wu, what do you mean? Lu Xinglan looked calm, but she was actually in a daze. Specifically, what did he mean? He had never noticed this before. He had been fighting at the border all year round, and all he saw were rough men. There were not many women. There were also middle-aged women who were thicker than men and looked more manly than men. When he returned to the capital, the women he occasionally saw were indeed different from those at the border. They made him feel even more disgusted than those middle-aged women at the border. He felt nauseous when he saw them, so he didn't want to pay attention to what they needed. But when he thought about it, the dresses seemed to be colorful. Slash. Chapter 2787. Also, there didn't seem to be any flowers on her hair. Were they all jewelry? All right, did she put makeup on her face? After thinking about it for a long time, Lu Xinglan's head started to hurt. He reached out and calmly rubbed his temples. What do you think? He threw the question to Xian Wu. Xian Wu was silent for a moment. Women have their period, so cotton cloth needs to be prepared. Lu Xinglan was speechless. Then he finally reacted and his face started to redden. Something else. Prepare cotton cloth for her? This, Xian Wu was silent for a moment. Some women with small feet need foot wrappings. It's a relatively long cotton cloth. Lu Xinglan felt his head hurt even more. He sighed. Other than cotton cloth, Wei Wei Bai's feet were indeed small. But those were healthy feet, not wrappings. Only some pedantic officials would bind their women's feet. Even a royal family didn't bind their feet. This was a trend brought by the previous generation of the Liu family, because women who entered the Liu family couldn't bind their feet. For a military family like the Liu family, binding one's feet meant that one had no fighting power. Even women couldn't stand it. The Liu family was strong and took the lead in resisting women with small feet. Many women who were harmed by small feet also agreed. Therefore, the trend of binding feet slowly died down. Binding feet was a handicap. Lu Xinglan recalled Wei Wei Bai's petite feet. Her pink toes were round and beautiful like pearls. Fortunately, she didn't have this habit. Otherwise, he would have to treat her feet. Xian Wu was silent for a while and finally said, "You need rouge and face powder. I saw a girl making it. Also, you need some money on your head." Lu Xinglan, money? Xian Wu, don't those women wear a pile of gold, silver, jade, and so on their heads? These things were money. They could be exchanged. Xian Wu added, but it's not good to give them gold directly. You need to mold the gold into flowers or something before wearing it. This woman was really pretentious. To be eye-catching, it would look best to stuff a lump of gold directly on her head. Xian Wu thought expressionlessly. Lu Xinglan was also a young master of an aristocratic family. It was because all the men in the Liu family died when he was young, and he was the only one. When he was young, he was invited to the palace by the Empress Dowager for a period of time. His loyal subordinates and elders in the army were afraid that his only son would be harmed. He immediately found a reason to take him away from the capital. Therefore, he grew up in the army. The first thing he saw when he opened the door was the cold snow and sandstorms of the border. She had never had the chance to learn about women's common sense. When she grew up and returned to the capital, the people she interacted with were all men. Because he kicked a woman out of the temple with one kick, he became famous. That was why no woman dared to approach him. Except for that disgusting Princess Yuanda. Lu Xinglan picked up the brush again and thought deeply for a while before saying, "Later, go to my mother's place and open the inner treasury. Pick out some pretty things that belong to women and bring them over." Xian Wu nodded expressionlessly. Yes. Then he disappeared. Lu Xinglan narrowed her eyes. There was a benefit to taking it from his mother. It was just that he was interested in Wei Wei Bai. Her request was for him to leave behind descendants. It would be best to treat the illness. Even if he didn't recover from his illness, if he and Wei Wei Bai had children, then this child would probably be snatched away by Mother Lu. He was disheartened by his mother because the person she liked was Yuanda. She had always wanted to have a good relationship with the royal family. And in her eyes, Yuanda was the best daughter-in-law. Chapter 2788. If Wei Wei Bai was pregnant, then this child would be an important weapon for his mother to force him to marry Yuanda. Because at that time, if he married this princess, it would be fine even if he didn't touch the princess. The child would be Wei Wei Bai. When Lu Xinglan thought of this, his eyes became gloomy and ruthless. That was a good plan. However, the Liu family and the royal family had long been at odds. If this emperor was a law-abiding person who guarded the country, the Liu family could still survive. However, Yuan Xian's ambition was simply carved on his face. If this kind of tyrant obtained power, it was expected that the southern country would be plunged into misery and suffering. As long as he was around, he would suppress the royal family. Otherwise, the world that the Liu family had fought for generations would rot just like that. The tip of Liu Xinglan's pen fell on the map and continued to draw. "Cousin," a weak voice called out softly. Liu Xinglan's pen stopped and his eyes darkened. Xin Wu had just gone to Mother Lu's place when this so-called cousin came. Did she know that there was no one guarding his courtyard? Liu Xinglan didn't say anything and just looked at the door indifferently. He saw his cousin, who was dressed in white, standing there. He had forgotten her name. He only knew that she was a close and especially distant relative of Mother Lu. They had barely seen each other. His cousin was as thin as a sheet of paper. She took out a handkerchief and pressed it to her mouth, coughing weakly. "I heard that cousin's condition has improved, so I specially came to visit cousin." Liu Xinglan looked at her indifferently and put down the pen in his hand. Then, he casually took a white handkerchief and slowly wiped his hands. The man was dressed in black and stood under the light. Under his thick eyelashes, his eyes were deep and clear. His handsome face was like that of a young man, with a trace of coldness and exquisiteness. His cousin looked at him with a trace of amazement in her eyes. Originally, she only coveted the power and status of the Liu family. She had never seen Liu Xinglan's face before. Now that she met him, she realized that this man was so handsome. His cousin's voice became even softer. "Cousin," Liu Xinglan said coldly, "have you seen enough? I'm not dead. I don't need you to cry at my funeral. You can leave." Her voice was so weak. It was extremely uncomfortable to hear. Those who didn't know better would think that was a wild ghost crying at the grave. The cousin's smile stiffened, and she was about to step into the house. However, Liu Xinglan said coldly, "I'm not sick. It's better if you don't come in." His cousin's footsteps paused as she recalled the various vicious rumors about him. "I heard that he even kicked the princess out today." It was extremely terrifying. If she walked in, would she be kicked out by Liu Xinglan? The cousin immediately stopped in place. She thought for a while, then steeled her heart and said softly, "Cousin, I haven't seen you in a long time. Can we talk through the candlelight under the moonlight?" Liu Xinglan gave her a sideways glance. A candlelight talk? Under the moonlight. Was this cousin raised in a brothel? How could he say such a shameless line? This wasn't something his woman should say. The younger cousin smiled gently. "Since I've moved into the Liu family, I'm a member of the Liu family. I know that I'm not worthy of the position of the main wife. A concubine is enough." Liu Xinglan was expressionless. There wasn't even a perfunctory response. When the cousin saw that he had no reaction, she immediately reached out to hold her forehead and stumbled over the threshold. She took a few steps forward, then suddenly fell forward. She was about to fall into Liu Xinglan's arms. However, the man took a few steps back unhurriedly. Chapter 2789. He perfectly avoided all of her attacks. The cousin fell heavily to the ground. She immediately put on a good posture and reached out to hold her forehead. Cousin, my old problem is acting up again. I faint at the touch of wind." Liu Xinglan lowered his eyes and looked at her coldly. The heavy smell of sandalwood in the room. It made his physiological reaction less intense. But when he saw the woman enter this room, he still began to feel disgusted. Liu Xinglan stared at the woman at his feet. After thinking for a while, he suddenly turned around and took the long sword on the wall. "Cousin," he said softly and calmly. The cousin immediately looked up in surprise, but she saw Liu Xinglan begin to draw the sword. The eerie light of the sword reflected the man's delicate features. "When I meet a woman, I start to lose control and want to kill." "No," he slowly corrected himself, his thin lips rising ferociously. "Yes, it's killing a woman." Before the sword completely left the scabbard, the cousin had already jumped up from the ground with a pale face and quickly fled outside. "Madman, you madman." Lu Xinglan held the sword and almost rolled his eyes. He wanted Xin Wu to sweep the floor. The floor was dirty because of that woman. Just as he was thinking this, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. The lantern outside the door illuminated a small area of the ground. The girl who had finished bathing was standing under the lantern, wearing a light sandalwood skirt and a light-colored wide-sleeve top. Her black hair was wet, and there was a light green copper coin grass that had just been picked by her ear. The round green copper leaves were also stained with mist. It was as beautiful as her eyes when she peeked inside. She met his eyes, was stunned, and immediately looked away. The sinister smile on Lu Xinglan's lips stiffened, and the eerie long sword in his hand was still half outside. He was no different from a madman who wanted to go to the battlefield to kill people. Right, his reputation on the battlefield was at its worst, and he was nicknamed by the people of the Northern Kingdom. Most of them were evil slaughterer, crazy butcher, and so on. Because he went to the battlefield, people went crazy. Except for his own people, he would kill whoever came. This made his murderous aura abnormally heavy. The sandalwood was also calming and suppressing. It gave him a boost of murderous aura. Could it be that he had scared her? Lu Xinglan pursed his lips and pulled away his sinister smile. After that, he stiffened for a moment before swiftly sheathing his sword. Then, he didn't say anything. Instead, he silently threw the sword on the table. It was only right for her to be afraid of him. It would be strange if no one was afraid of someone like him. Lu Xinglan thought coldly. Would he be scared away? Lu Xinglan's body stiffened, and she stopped herself from turning back to look. So what if he ran away? Suddenly, there was a rustling sound. He quickly turned around. Did she really run away? However, he saw Wei Wei by walking in softly with her head lowered, lifting her skirt, revealing half of her beautiful embroidered shoes. She didn't have much of an expression on her face. She just calmly called out, "Young master." Her voice was soft, but very pleasant to the ears. Lu Xinglan stared blankly at her damp hair and didn't say anything. She was afraid of him. Otherwise, why would it be so awkward? He turned his head to the side, and his expression immediately darkened. But he heard the girl's soft whisper behind him. "Young master, are you planning to take in another concubine?" He stopped in his tracks. The girl's seductive voice was almost inaudible. "Under the moonlight, we talked through the night." Lu Xinglan's gloomy expression almost collapsed. He turned his head and saw the girl with her head lowered. Her drooping eyelashes were full of tears. She blinked, as if she wanted to wipe away the tears in her eyes. Wei Wei by secretly wiped away her tears. She didn't look up and just revealed a forced smile. "Young master, it's natural for you to have other women, but your illness has only just recovered. You can't take in too many concubines at once. It's not good for your health." At this point, a tear fell from her eyes. She immediately wiped it away, afraid that someone would see it. A slender finger suddenly and gently brushed past her reddened eyes. The girl looked up blankly, but she saw Lu Xinglan standing in front of her, looking at her with his head lowered. She didn't know if it was because of the candlelight, but the man's eyes had an extra layer of gentle light. His voice was low and unbelievably gentle. "I won't take in any more concubines. //." Chapter 2790. Not being disgusted by her was already the limit. He couldn't imagine other women getting close to him without being disgusted. As soon as he finished, Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered. She suddenly hugged his waist and rested her face on his chest. Her voice trembled. "Young master." Lu Xinglan felt the girl's freshness after bathing, staining his clothes and skin. Even his gloomy mood turned for the better. His deep eyes softened, and a trace of a smile appeared at the corner of his lips. He slowly reached out and was about to hug her awkwardly. However, he heard Xin Wu's cold voice. "I brought it." Wei Wei Bai left his body with a whoosh. Lu Xinglan's fingers froze in midair, and he remained silent. Then, he turned around and said to Xin Wu, "Leave it first. I'll bring it to her room tomorrow." Xin Wu said, "Oh, I've put it away. Your mother even asked me to bring a bowl of soup. She said it's good for the body." Lu Xinglan didn't want to drink it. However, when he thought of Wei Wei Bai's small body and cold hands and feet, he felt that her body was too weak and needed nourishment. He pretended to cough lightly. Bring it in. Then, he turned around to look at Wei Wei Bai. He found that the girl was leaning to one side with her head lowered. He could only see that the tips of her ears were slightly red under the light green copper coin grass. It was unusually soft and cute. He looked at her deeply and said softly, "Drink with me." Wei Wei Bai glanced back at him secretly. She didn't refuse and nodded lightly. She said to the system, "There's supper, hee." The system said, "Eat hard. Do your best." His fridge was full of supper. He couldn't finish it. Fortunately, the side missions hadn't come yet. He still had time to digest. Bai Weiwei reservedly sat at the table, waiting to drink the soup. Lu Xinglan scooped the soup for himself. He was used to doing it at the border. Back in the capital, although he still had the aura of a prince from a big family, he didn't have so many bad habits. He deliberately gave Bai Weiwei a little more soup. This small body needed to eat more meat to add more meals. Wei Wei Bai blushed and dared not raise her head to drink. The taste of this soup was a little rich. She raised her eyebrows and seemed to be a little hot. Did old Mother Lu put an aphrodisiac in the soup? So despicable? Yes, she liked it. Lu Xinglan also drank 2 mouthfuls. The taste was very strong, but she did not know what to put in. He didn't have much of a reaction, but he felt that the taste of this soup was unfamiliar. He had never tasted this soup before. He asked casually, "What soup is this?" If it was effective in nourishing the body, he could continue to cook it for Wei Wei Bai in the future. Xin Wu was incomparably calm. Tiger penis. The two of them stopped drinking the soup. Expressionless fifth Xin continued to add, paired with caterpillar fungus, velvet antler, goat kidney, and a series of other tonics. Your mother said that if soup alone is too bland, then she'll order someone to make a dog meat hot pot for you. Lu Xinglan stopped drinking her soup. Wei Wei Bai was faster, and the bowl was almost empty. The two of them fell silent. Xin Wu's expression was calm. The atmosphere became even more silent. Smoke rose from the soup. Lu Xinglan suddenly put down the spoon calmly and said unusually calmly, "You can't drink too much of this. It's too nutritious. Take it away." Drinking such a hot thing on an empty stomach. It was not good for women. Then he ordered someone to cook millet porridge and bring it up. Wei Wei Bai felt that they were especially calm, so she should be calm too. After all, a pure girl would not understand the effects of this thing and what it was for. Chapter 2791. She put down the spoon and said to the system, "Why don't you tell me what this soup is made of?" The system said, "I can't say. Isn't this a beeping organ?" I said it's automatically blocked. Wei Wei Bai, this blocking system was so crazy that it couldn't even talk about animals. Then how did the animal world broadcast it? Lu Xinglan was very calm. He glanced at Wei Wei Bai from the corner of his eyes. He saw that she was confused and didn't seem to know what was going on. He sighed in relief. Then, he calmly reached out his hand and carelessly smoothed his hair to cover his red ears. The millet porridge supper was very good for the stomach. After the supper, Lu Xinglan let her sit at the long table. There were a few boxes of girls' jewelry on it. The rouge and powder were newly bought. When she heard that it was Lu Mother who remembered Bai Weiwei's contributions, she asked the maid to get some for her. The brocade dresses were all placed in the outer room. It was not easy to put them in if they were too big. Lu Xinglan said calmly, "Look at those you don't like and throw them away." Afraid that she would feel uncomfortable, he said calmly, "I'll go take a bath first. You can look at them yourself." After that, he turned and walked out. After he walked out, he paused for a while before quietly turning back. He hid in the shadows and looked into the room. Under the dim yellow light, the girl sat on the overly wide sandalwood chair. She leaned against the table and carefully took out a golden butterfly hairpin decorated with red tourmaline. She seemed to be curious and pointed at the butterfly. The butterfly shook a little. It was very cute. She couldn't help but tilt her body and reveal a happy smile. The candlelight was delicate and soft. The girl's eyes were soft and beautiful. Lu Xinglan looked at it in a daze and couldn't help but smile. Then he turned and left. as long as you like it. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 30. Wei Wei Bai pointed at the jewelry. How much can these things be sold for? They're made of gold, and this hairpin is pure silver. If I melt it, I can get some broken pieces of silver. The system fell silent as it looked at the pile of golden hairpins. The wages of craftsmanship were even more expensive than the materials. Host can actually look at such an exquisite and beautiful object. How could he say such unscrupulous words? Wei Wei Bai added, I think we can melt all of this gold and make a set of 10 caddies of gold bracelets. It will definitely look very good when worn. The system remained calm. The host's sense of beauty had been completely corrupted by money. He shouldn't have been surprised, because a 10-kilogram golden chain seemed to be quite pretty. It was filled with the fragrance of money. The bathing place was a huge soaking pool made of wooden planks. Amidst the warm steam, Lu Xinglan lowered her head, and her black hair fell on the water. He furrowed his brows and pursed his thin lips, which were abnormally red. The man's face was covered in sweat, and his cheeks were flushed. He seemed to have thought of something. He lowered his head and endured. Was it because men had a stronger reaction to these nourishing soups? Lu Xinglan didn't know what to do, but she thought of the girl leaning on the chair and holding the butterfly hairpin. She smiled sweetly, and her fair wrists were exposed from the wide sleeves. That patch of fair skin on her wrists. Fair wrists. Lu Xinglan's nose heated up. He reached out and touched it. Fortunately, there was no nosebleed. It was just that his qi and blood had been used, and his breath had heated up. Lu Xinglan immediately used his internal energy to suppress the thoughts in his head. Slash. Chapter 2792. He couldn't stop himself from touching her wrist. It was simply too strange. Lu Xinglan, who had never touched a woman before, felt the pain of touching a woman's hand for the first time. He stepped out of the warm pool, then squatted by the wooden pool and splashed his head with cold water. Xin Wu asked from outside, Did you use too much nourishment? Lu Xinglan froze in his actions. Xin Wu asked, Do you need some ice water? Lu Xinglan. Xin Wu said, I know these things. Do you want me to teach you? Lu Xinglan finally looked up fiercely and asked through gritted teeth, What do you know? Xin Wu said, coldly, Every time after a battle, don't the soldiers take the reward money and go find the women in the brothel? Lu Xinglan pursed his lips and suddenly said coldly, Don't compare this. He didn't want to hear it. He mentioned Wei Wei Bai and the brothel together. A murderous intent surged in his heart. Xin Wu was silent for a moment and then asked, You seem to treat your wife like this. Only the wife was humiliated. Only men would be so angry. Lu Xinglan was stunned. He didn't think much about whether she was the wife or not, because women were too disgusting for him. Finally, there was a delicate Wei Wei Bai, but he found that girls didn't seem as disgusting as he thought. But the wife? Lu Xinglan knew the weight of this position, so he didn't put her in this position for a while. Xin Wu didn't say anything. Lu Xinglan was silent for a while. After calming down, he grabbed his clothes, put them on, and disappeared into the bathroom. Lu Xinglan returned to the room and saw the girl sitting on the edge of the bed, gently bending down to take off her shoes. Her beautiful and thin back had a trace of clothes because of the bend, which made her soft waist even more obvious. Lu Xinglan even saw that there seemed to be a belt around her neck under her clothes. What kind of clothes needed a belt around the neck? The man was a little confused. After the girl took off her shoes, her thin and white instep and her slender ankles were exposed. They were too delicate. They couldn't stand being dirty at all. Wei Wei Bai seemed to sense his gaze. She looked up and smiled softly. Young master. Lu Xinglan's breath warmed up, and she immediately said in a muffled voice, Okay, let's sleep. Wei Wei Bai nodded and gently placed her feet on the lake green bed. It was so white that it was shining. Lu Xinglan glanced at him and immediately turned away to look at the top of the bed. She had already gone to get a thinner blanket, rolled it up bit by bit, and then isolated it in the middle. It was still the part of her that was small, almost the same size as her body. The outer side of the bed was very empty. Lu Xinglan didn't say a word. She watched her actions and didn't say anything. After all, if he directly told her not to roll up the blanket and isolate herself, it would seem too lecherous. Therefore, Lu Xinglan held it in and didn't say a word. Wei Wei Bai lightly yawned and pulled over her little blanket. She laid her head on the pillow and softly said, "Young master, if you feel nauseous, remember to tell me. I will try my best to stay away from you. If your condition worsens, you can also throw me to the ground." At this point, a trace of naive gentleness appeared on the girl's face. Young master is more important. Lu Xinglan didn't say anything. Instead, he pursed his lips in silence. He saw her thick eyelashes drooping, as if she was about to fall asleep. Lu Xinglan could only reach out and flicked his fingers to extinguish a few candles. Only a lamp at the door and a red candle beside the bed were left on. Under the faint light, Lu Xinglan lay on the bed. He half closed his eyes and tried hard to wait. /say button. Chapter 2793. He could hear the girl's shallow breathing next door. His body stiffened. It was like lying in the cold snow, waiting for the enemy to arrive. That feeling, it tested his endurance and stamina. Although it didn't require much stamina here, it seemed to test his endurance even more. Why wasn't she sleeping yet? She seemed to be unable to bear it and turned over. Her small body curled up. The blanket moved along with her. Lu Xinglan remained silent and continued to wait. When she fell asleep, he could remove the eyesore in the middle of the blanket. Moreover, she was not a good sleeper and was in a deep sleep. She would roll over on her own accord. When that time came, he could touch her. It wouldn't be considered his fault. Lu Xinglan tried his best to wait and wait. She carefully turned over and seemed to be holding her breath. She seemed to be afraid of waking him up. Lu Xinglan stared at the top of the bed expressionlessly. Why wasn't she sleeping yet? He held his breath and didn't say anything. Then, he carefully looked to the side to see what was wrong with her. However, when he turned his eyes, he saw Wei Wei Bai with her eyes wide open. The corners of her eyes were red and her face was moist, just like her peach blossom cheeks. Lu Xinglan frowned and immediately got up to touch her face. It was terrifyingly hot. Wait a minute, those tonics should be more effective on men. Her body was cold. Why was her reaction so big? Wei Wei Bai seemed to be a little confused. Why, young master? Did I wake you up? In the dim light, the man's expression was terrifyingly serious. He stared at her for a while before saying helplessly, "Don't hold it like this in the future." With that said, he got off the bed and went to find an ice basin. There was a large piece of ice in the basin. Lu Xinglan expressionlessly smashed it with his palm. Then, he took a cotton handkerchief and wrapped it around the ice. Then, he reached out and brushed away the stray hair in front of her forehead with his fingers, placing the ice on her forehead. She was heating up. He was cooling her down. Wei Wei Bai stared at him, her gaze soft and dazed. She was like an insensible child, hiding her discomfort and thinking that no one would find out. Lu Xinglan was about to condemn her, but he paused for a moment. He covered her face with ice for a while. After making sure that the redness at the corners of her eyes had subsided a little, he removed the ice that was beginning to melt. The weather is so hot. Furthermore, he had eaten something that was extremely nutritious. It was harmful and not beneficial. He coldly ordered the people outside. Warm water, towels, and bitter medicine to reduce the heat. Bitterness and anger. Especially in this kind of summer, among all the medicines that could reduce internal heat, the bitter taste was definitely the best. The items were brought over. Lu Xinglan slowly fed Wei Wei Bai water. The medicine was still brewing. In the deep night, the air was filled with a bitter medicinal fragrance. Wei Wei Bai struggled to open her eyes. She was lying on the bed like a soft blanket. Her face was beginning to regain its color, and there was a fragile beauty to it. Lu Xinglan's brows were still furrowed as she sat by the bed. Her gloomy eyes were filled with worry. Wei Wei Bai looked at him blankly for a while. Only then did she reach out and gently hook his fingertips. "Young master." Her voice was trembling, but it was filled with unconcealable affection. "You're such a good person. You're really a good person." This was a sentence that Lu Xinglan was not unfamiliar with. Many commoners had sincerely said this to him, who had won many battles. In the end, it was not as shocking as her weak gaze and weak praise. Lu Xinglan looked at her for a long time before finally sighing and gently stroking the ends of her beautiful eyes. His voice was low and gentle. "Sleep, I'm here." The night gradually darkened. The man's back was facing the candlelight. In the darkness, his eyes seemed to contain the broken light of stars. He gently bent his fingers and held her fingertips in his palm, tightening it little by little. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 35. Slash. Forward slash, forward slash. Comma. Chapter 2794. Wei Wei Bai stayed up all night before she finally got over it. The medicine was extremely bitter. Lu Xinglan's expression was gentle, but his fingers were firm as he forced her down. When she woke up, she only had one thought. Was he still a man? Such a good opportunity. Why don't you go? Important things must be said 3 times. She even asked the system to give her some system chocolate, afraid that the tonic wasn't enough. She almost pounced on him. However, every time she moved, Lu Xinglan would hold her hand down calmly, using a very polite gesture to isolate her. He ensured that she was like an overturned crab, absolutely unable to jump up. Wei Wei Bai thought, "You're not a man. You're a eunuch. You're asexual. Your masculine spirit must have been castrated." Wei Wei Bai touched her face worriedly. "Am I not good-looking enough?" System. Here comes the host again. Once you're not good-looking, you feel that your appearance is not good enough. What's the use of appearance? Personality is the key. The host's performance is based on appearance. It's not based on beauty. Wei Wei Bai had already returned to her room, which looked brand new. Perhaps Xian Wu felt that he didn't understand girls' decorations, so he went to look at the boudoirs of those rich families silently. He remembered that girls needed good-looking screens, dressing tables, vases, zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, ink, paper, flowers, jewelry, and rouge. Even the bed had to be fucking embroidered by the best embroiderer, exquisite and beautiful. Anyway, no matter what, everything should be arranged to look good. Xian Wu thought, women are pretentious. So Wei Wei Bai's room was now more or less like a lady's boudoir. Even the jewelry was from Xian Wu's inner chamber, choosing the best. He was good at nothing else, but he was good at judging the price. As for whether it looked good or not, how could the most expensive not look good? Of course it would look good. Mother Lu's heart ached, but Xian Wu was Lu Xinglan's important confidant, and also one of the super generals on battlefield. He was Lu Xinglan's personal bodyguard. His identity and status were very transcendent. Even Mother Lu couldn't command him. They could only stare at him and watch him take away all the most expensive items in the palace treasury. Wei Wei Bai looked at the room full of jewelry that exuded the fragrance of gold and heard about Xian Wu's hard work. He felt that Lu Xinglan was not a man. His woman's belongings were actually picked by another man. Xian Wu was the target, right? What's this about aesthetics and consideration? He was 10,000 times better than that castrated man, Lu Xinglan. Wei Wei Bai hugged the gold jewelry and said, "Sigh, I think Xian Wu is much more handsome." The system said, "Wake up, you're talking about the male lead of your strategy." Wei Wei Bai held the gold jewelry box in her hands. "Do I look handsome?" The system was silent for a while, then said, "Yes, you are indeed much more handsome." Wei Wei Bai was relieved. Tong Zi's aesthetic standards had indeed improved a lot under her influence. After Lu Xinglan finished practicing, he sheathed his sword. Then he walked to the edge of the martial field, beside the purple jasmine flowers. Behind the flowers was a long corridor under the roof. In the corridor was Wei Wei Bai's boudoir. Her boudoir was slightly higher. He looked up and saw the semicircular window. The window was half open, and there were red balsamine flowers in it. Lu Xinglan saw a slender figure leaning against the window, picking the balsamine flowers in the vase. His eyesight was very good, and he could see the delicate touch of the halo on the girl's beautiful face. Her hair was tied up and pinned with a golden hairpin, as well as a few elegant pink flowers. It was very beautiful. Slash. Chapter 2795. She plucked enough petals and crushed them. Then, she carefully applied nail polish to her nails. Lu Xinglan didn't know what she was doing and watched in confusion. Did she get flowers on her nails? However, he felt that the girl leaning against the window lazily extended her slender fingers and smeared the red juice on her nails. Her actions were exceptionally charming. Xian Wu stood silently by his side. Lu Xinglan suddenly turned around and looked at him from head to toe before saying, "Can you stay away from me when I'm looking at people?" Xian Wu's face was expressionless. "What if you die?" Lu Xinglan, Xian Wu said, "Although it looks safe here, who knows if there are assassins in the flowers, sharpshooters on the roof, and traps under your feet. I have to be careful." Lu Xinglan, "It's not that bad." Xian Wu snorted expressionlessly. "Never underestimate how hostile your enemies are to you. Tell me, how many people have a grudge against you?" Lu Xinglan really thought about it. Only the imperial family. The rest didn't seem to be that many. Xian Wu said, "The imperial family, both inside and outside, has about 500 to 600 people. If you include the palace maids and eunuchs, even 1,000 or 2,000 would be too little. You still think it's too little?" Lu Xinglan's expression also froze. Then, she said lightly, "You don't look at my woman." Xian Wu squinted. "If not, why would I look at her? Is she beautiful?" Lu Xinglan was silent for a long time before saying faintly, "Do you think she's beautiful?" Xian Wu, "She's quite beautiful." Lu Xinglan slowly pulled out the sword in her hand. "Let's compare notes so that our martial arts don't deteriorate and we don't know if the enemy has dug a hole under our feet." Xian Wu, "What did he say wrong? Wasn't praising his woman the same as praising him? It was rare for him to get angry just from flattery. What kind of person was this?" Lu Xinglan was still slashing at Xian Wu. Wei Wei Bai finished painting her nails when Madame Lu's servant came. She smiled gently and followed Madame Lu's servant out. Madame Lu's house was some distance away from Lu Xinglan's courtyard, and it was especially big. The furnishings in the house were also very rich. Mother Lu was sitting on a chair, and beside her were 6 female servants, fanning, peeling grapes, hammering feet, adding ice cubes. There was also one who was holding a fruit. It seemed to be to ensure that the house had the fragrance of flowers and fruits. He lived a more carefree life than the emperor. Wei Wei Bai flipped through some of Mother Lu's information. She knew that Mother Lu had lived in the capital for a long time and had a lot of extravagance in the capital. Moreover, he was too close to the royal family. The imperial family had been using all kinds of bribes to corrupt Mother Lu's consciousness. Now, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Mother Lu was half a spy for the royal family. The scary thing was that Mother Lu didn't think that she was a spy. Instead, she thought that she was mixed up with the royal family and was wholeheartedly good to her son. There were many people in the royal family who were trying to brainwash her. Since ancient times, very few generals whose achievements shook the emperor had a good ending. But the new emperor was merciful. If the Lu family could hand over their power, the emperor would be merciful. If the royal family was willing to let the princess marry into the Lu family would be a relative of the royal family. They would be a family. So, of course, they wouldn't have any dangerous thoughts about Lu Xinglan. When Mother Lu entered the family, she was just a daughter of a small family and didn't have a big vision. When she was young, she handed Lu Xinglan over to the royal family once. Later on, if it wasn't for the loyal subordinates of the Lu family who couldn't stand it and took her away to the border. Chapter 2796. Lu Xinglan's grave was already taller than a person. That was why Lu Xinglan and Mother Lu were estranged. After Wei Wei Bai flipped through the information, she looked at Mother Lu sympathetically. What kind of brain did she have? The royal family wanted to destroy the Lu family. If Lu Xinglan handed over her military power, she would be cut into pieces. Mother Lu actually thought that she could become a part of the royal family. Wasn't she asking for a beating? It wasn't easy for Lu Xinglan either. Even her mother wasn't reliable. Who else was unreliable? She was the most reliable. After all, her goal was to love him. She could guarantee that when he saw her, It was as if he saw a shield stronger than a 10-meter thick city wall. The system heard the host's self-evaluation. It held it in and didn't say anything. When the side mission came, you were the main character, the 100-meter-long blade that stabbed people a few times every day and didn't allow them to heal. Wei Wei Bai bowed politely and lowered her head to greet her. Mother Lu smiled and sipped her tea unhurriedly, showing her arrogance. She didn't ask Wei Wei Bai to get up, but there was a hint of contempt in her voice. "Did you succeed last night?" Wei Wei Bai looked up blankly and said, "Madam, what happened?" Mother Lu narrowed her eyes, thinking that she was pretending. Last night, she ate more than half of the tonics that she brought. She spent the night in Lu Xinglan's room. The maid who peeped in the morning saw Xin Wu carrying the messy bedding to wash. If this wasn't a success, then what was? If it was a success, it meant that her son could get close to women. So, his illness was definitely cured. It was fine as long as he could get close to women. Bai Weiwei saw Mother Lu's cold gaze, as cold as a pile of ice shards. Why did this old witch feel like she was here to pick a fight? Mother Lu gave a perfunctory smile. It seems that the young master has recovered. It's all thanks to you. Someone, give her a bowl of lychee soup. This thing is very rare, and only the imperial consecrators have it. The royal family's royal family. But the Lu family did. Who would believe that Mother Lu was not in cahoots with the royal family? Madame Lu looked like she had a seal on her forehead that said she was the Empress Dowager. Seeing Mother Lu proudly talking about the offerings, she knew that she especially enjoyed the royal family's flattery. Immediately, a maidservant brought in a bowl of peeled lychees, covered with crushed ice, crushed fruits, and honey water. This thing looked really good, as expected of a royal consecrator. She also wanted to rebel after seeing him. Wei Wei Bai naturally had to be polite. She immediately took a few steps back with a panicked look on her face. This is too expensive. This servant doesn't dare to eat it. Mother Lu snorted coldly. Just eat it. What are you talking about? If you don't want to eat, then force it down. Wei Wei Bai asked the system, "Is this thing poisoned?" Don't let this old lady say all the villainous lines. You're forcing it? The system took a look and said, "Oh, there's a secret medicine added to it. If someone takes it, they'll be infertile. If someone takes it, they'll be infertile." Wei Wei Bai said, "That's all." The system said, "That's all. What else do you want? It's already hard enough that the secret medicine can come up with one effect. Do you really think there's an all-purpose poison?" Wei Wei Bai said, "Wait, didn't this old lady want to have children? Why did she give me this thing?" The system said, when the royal family sent the lychees this morning, they said that if the male lead recovers, he can have children with the princess. Other people's children are not pure blood, so they don't want them. Download the at https://m Sashu. Comsay button to record this chapter. Next time you open the bookshelf, you'll see it, if you like. Chapter 2797. You can search Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come to Sashu. Come on Baidu to find the S. Wei Wei Bai understood. The royal family was a troublemaker. She hesitated for a while before accepting the bowl of lychees. "Thank you for the gift, madam," she said in a low voice. Madame Lu smiled coldly and said in a kind tone, "Eat, good girl. You're Xinglan's concubine after all. You won't be mistreated later." If the princess was unhappy about having another concubine, she would just beat her to death to make the princess happy. Wei Wei Bai picked up the spoon and scooped up a lychee. It looked delicious, although it was hot, but it was sweet. She was about to eat when the system said, "Buy some more time. The male lead is coming to save you." When Bai Weiwei heard this, she immediately stuffed the lychee into her mouth. The speed at which he ate was extremely fast. The system said, "Wait, why are you eating this? You'll break the bowl. You'll be infertile." Wei Wei Bai swallowed the lychee. "When have I ever been pregnant?" The system paused. "That's right, the host is infertile. What's the difference between eating this and not eating it?" Wei Wei Bai said, "If I don't eat quickly, there won't be any left when Lu Xinglan comes." The system suddenly realized, "Then eat quickly. She's almost there. There's only 10 seconds left. Eat one every second." Wei Wei Bai looked elegant, but she ate one lychee with each bite. The core was already removed. It was sweet and cold. The next time she cooked it, she had to make 3 pounds, or she wouldn't be full. She was about to eat the last lychee. She was about to eat the last honey-colored fruit. Don't waste. It's shameful to waste, you know? She was such a virtuous person. She always knew shame. Lu Xinglan just received news from the royal family. In the morning, the royal family sent a basket of lychees and a few carts of ice to the Lu family. He only raised his eyebrows calmly when he heard this. After all, this was the royal family's usual routine. Madame Lu accepted the news happily. He was silent for a while, but in the end, he only smiled coldly and said nothing. But when he saw the royal family's secret medicine in the basket of lychees, he frowned. He frowned. Child-severing soup? Xin Wu reminded him. To prevent some concubines from having children, it was specially developed to prevent them from having children. Lu Xinglan didn't realize who it was for. The poison wouldn't kill anyone. He thought for a while, and suddenly looked up at Wei Wei Bai's room. Inside the door and beside the window, that beautiful figure had long since disappeared. He had just sparred with Xin Wu and checked the news from the royal family. He didn't notice that Wei Wei Bai was missing for a while. Xin Wu immediately went to inquire about it. When he came back, he said, "It's with your mother. The medicine should be for her." Lu Xinglan's mind turned, and her dark eyes were filled with a thick murderous aura and ruthlessness. She dares. These words were directed at his mother. He had always known what kind of person his mother was, but he had never expected anything from her. As long as they didn't drag him down, he would be on his guard. In the future, when the dust settled, she would give up on relying on the royal family. Who would have thought that she would be so deeply corrupted by the royal family? Lu Xinglan turned and rushed to Mother Lu's room. His fingers were trembling. This was different from the cold and solemn mood he had when he was on the battlefield. But the feeling was the same in the end. He wanted to kill someone. He quickly kicked away several maids who tried to stop him and directly kicked open the door. He saw Wei Wei Bai standing there. Her delicate side profile was exceptionally cute. She was holding a small jade bowl in her hand and eating unhurriedly. The bowl was already empty. Lu Xinglan stopped in his tracks. His black eyes were full of ferocious blood vessels. His mind was blank. When he stepped into the room, his fingers couldn't help but hold on to the horizontal bar by the door. It seemed that all his strength had disappeared. There was only one thought that made his ears ring. It was too late. Wei Wei Bai looked up and saw Lu Xinglan standing against the light by the door. The man's slender figure was like a cold blade that had been unsheathed. It was full of vicious and violent murderous aura. The smile that was about to rise at the corner of her mouth froze. She was just about to ask what happened. Suddenly, a trace of blood overflowed from her mouth. Then, drop by drop, the blood gathered into a line. The girl blankly reached out to touch her lips. Her hand was full of blood. The bowl in her hand fell to the ground. Stained with blood, it looked like a flower that had bloomed. Chapter 2798. Wei Wei Bai stood there in a daze. Her hands covering her mouth were stained with blood. She seemed a little strange. She couldn't even react. She could only watch. She even wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked unusually calm. In the eyes of others, she was just scared silly. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of her. He paused at the door just now, but in half a second, he was already beside her. The man's neck was lowered. Because he ran too fast, a few strands of hair fell from his temples in a mess. He looked a little embarrassed. His eyes in the shadows were scarlet. His thin lips were tightly pursed. They were so red that they looked like they were about to bleed. Wei Wei Bai seemed to come back to her senses. She quickly wiped the blood from her mouth and said strangely, "I don't know why, but this isn't an auspicious sign. It's rare for the old madam to see me. I'm too rude." Suddenly, the girl's words stopped. Lu Xinglan reached out and gently touched her cheek. There was a trace of blood on his fingertips. Then, he slowly went to the back of her neck and gently touched it. Then, He took a step forward and pressed her face to his shoulder. It was as gentle as touching his own child. His low and hoarse voice was holding back something, but it was unusually calm. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Bai Weiwei's whole body stiffened. She seemed to realize what he had said. Finally, she opened her blood-stained lips, and a sad voice choked out from her throat. Her tears fell without warning. Lu Xinglan felt her whole body trembling, but she didn't dare to cry out loud. She was not a fool. She knew that something was wrong with the things she ate. Lu Xinglan could hardly imagine what kind of mood she had to say that she was inauspicious. The power of an aristocratic family, a huge monster. She was a small servant, even if she was poisoned. She was beaten to death. After she died, she was casually thrown into a mass grave and eaten by wild dogs. No one pitied her. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes. His fingers touched her head unhurriedly, and his other hand landed gently on her back. This kind of medicine couldn't be turned back once it was eaten. He couldn't force the poison out either. His true qi entered her body only to make her feel better. Then, he picked her up without saying a word. He didn't even look at Mother Lu. The maid beside Mother Lu came over and said respectfully, "Young master, this is—" He didn't even finish his sentence. Lu Xinglan kicked the maid away. He finally looked up at Mama Lu, who was sitting in the middle with a dark expression. "Mother." His voice was cold and indifferent, chilling to the bone. "Do you think that because I've recovered, my medicine is useless and needs to be thrown away?" Mother Lu furrowed her brows. She slapped the armrest of the chair and said angrily, "What's wrong with you? How dare you kick my servant? Are you trying to embarrass me?" Lu Xinglan hugged the person in her arms and felt that her body was unusually cold. This kind of coldness went straight into his heart. He didn't lower his head to look at her. Instead, he stared at the small patch of ground that was stained red by her blood. Then he said slowly, "Face, when you accept the large amount of wealth that the imperial family give you every month and sell my message pen to them, where did you get the face to ask this?" Mother Lu's face turned pale, and she immediately retorted in a panic. "What do you mean by betrayal? Child, how can you say that? I'm doing this for your own good. The Emperor values the Lu family so much because of your mother's mediation." Lu Xinglan finally turned his eyes, and his gaze slowly fell on his mother. /save button. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.